start off this morning just kind of getting ourselves rolling, thinking about what we really want this process to accomplish. And then we're going to jump right into looking at the standards. I'm going to go through the process that we're going to use. You can make changes to it if you want. If something doesn't feel comfortable to you, we can always alter it. And I have a copy for each of you too, so I'll pass it on. All right. This is called a walkabout survey. And what I want you to do first is only in this first, do not write on these two columns, okay? Just in this first column where there's a question, I want you to write a short response. For example, what is your greatest hope for this process? And just jot down what your thinking is on that. And then under that it says, what is your biggest concern as we proceed? And then finally, if we do well, how will it impact our children? We'll just take a few minutes. Again, no writing in the other two columns, just that one.
When everyone gets here, can you read it in once?
Absolutely. That's why I pulled my computer up so we could cover those. In fact, Jan, as soon as I find them here, we did come around with the noise up. That's probably something we should just have it standing posted. Morning.
Parking spots are not always really
No,
good.
they are. Bit of a challenge.
standards in the K-12 or the 6-12 social studies. We were just wondering, there's been some discussion about having a brief joint meeting to kind of have some direction. Anybody had that conversation?
We did, we talked about it this morning, not everybody was here, but we were thinking maybe the next round, we could start with that conversation. Like the next time we all get together. We're just now starting to dive into our work, so I'm not sure that we're really prepared to tell you which direction we're going until we kind of get into it.
Does it make sense to take that direction if we end up going off in a different direction and ours don't align?
Yeah, I mean, eventually we're gonna have to do some alignment work for sure.
Yeah, what's the purpose of wanting to get together?
There's discussion about the current standards and the way they're formatted and the way that they on the placemat, what that looks like, and just having a general conversation about, so we have an idea of what you guys are working on a little bit. You have an idea, or hear our thoughts, if there's any questions that are holistic in nature, kind of just coming together to. We started yesterday, had a long day of discussion, and basically went over the bill in depth and started to look a little bit at our current standards.
We didn't even get there.
Yeah, we've yet to look at this.
That's why I don't think we're, not that we don't want to meet with you guys, but I don't think we're ready. Because we just haven't done anything yesterday. That makes sense.
When y'all break for lunch, why don't we just swing by and see where we are?
Okay.
And maybe we'll have a little time to squeeze in after lunch.
Okay. That's kind of what we were thinking, maybe.
Okay.
We were thinking maybe like, I don't know, I don't want to take your lunchtime or what you're planning. Since we're starting a little earlier today, we thought we may have our lunch a little bit earlier, more 11:30, 12:30. And then maybe we could,
That's what we were doing yesterday.
okay,
Yeah.
and then maybe,
Are these conference rooms open at 11:30?
Well, usually one of us stays in here to make sure that they can come back up here and eat if you want to. That's not a
Would be
problem.
interested in doing that, kind of sitting together at lunch.
we can take that back to our group and ask. We did receive our meal tickets today. I don't know if they.
Oh, did we?
They got theirs yesterday.
They got theirs. You
I
didn't get ours?
I hold them hostage.
Everybody would at least have the opportunity to have food here on site, so.
So a discussion in our group that impacts everyone is whether or not the standards in the placemat, the serving standards, whether they are up for grabs or not. And so we have differences of opinion on that. It would be logical to have those standards that flow to all subjects, that we cover all subjects, that they would be the same K to 12. So we're asking students to do the same things. Not the same language, but we want to increase that rigor over time. So if we have a totally different direction in those standards for the placemats, different from elementary, high school, that becomes an issue. So that's one thing that we want to take care of before we get, all the way down the road, do all kinds of work and say, oh, but.
And look at what you guys have worked on, so we're going in a totally different direction. So just communicating together would be something that I think our group would appreciate if you have that time to squeeze into your schedule this afternoon.
I'm talking about blue placemat, or show up. Blue placemat.
Right.
Which is the headings for all the others. The sort of
For
categories.
GLEs, CLEs, yeah.
I think we can certainly talk to people.
Sure. We'll work it out. We'll send somebody down a break or something to say, maybe what time, and if we'll come here, you guys go up there, whatever it is. So.
Sounds good.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
How can you need some more time to adjust their employee? Oh, well, we can't do that.
Sorry. We should, well, I almost did. No, I'm not. So I should.
John, you did last point.
I know Ryan,
Time.
Yeah.
was he a teacher? Parent, he's a.
Apparently, they had a big discussion over, there were some people who interpreted the bill as saying that the new placemat is not something you can change, and they had a big discussion about that. I don't know.
I beg to differ because of Common Core standards in Common Arts and Math, this stuff changed.
I don't think there's any problem.
Right.
And the other thing on that back here, this, and that's tied with Common Core too. In fact, that the communication arts is going to change, so how's it going to change into social studies? It's all interconnected.
This is
I was
the
thinking about
document
that on the phone.
that I was explaining to you, I was a part of that process. It's, it's, gosh, it's quite old, so I don't see any problem. I mean, I never see any time to revise and look at it.
I think I heard an interesting spin yesterday. We had our own secret meeting too.
Wow.
Well,
We did.
no. There were some of us who were asked by the Missouri School Board Association to
Toby,
participate.
did you have the laptop on?
We met and talked about the idea that the Common Core is kind of a moot point because we've adopted the Missouri learning standards, and that is in fact really what we are trying to look at, revise, tweak, whatever the case might be. So perhaps to help facilitate a focus on the agenda at hand, if you can think about tracking towards the Missouri learning standards and being able to focus our attention on that piece rather than get sidetracked by other things. Just a thought that that was the conversation that we had in a meeting with our representative from SBA yesterday afternoon.
All right, here's what we're gonna do, with what you have just completed. Everybody has this filled out, and in just a minute, I'm going to ask you to get up and just kind of rotate around the room. And each of these rectangles will be filled in by a different person. So for example, I might come over to Alden and say, Alden, what is your greatest hope for this process? And he's gonna tell me, and I'm just gonna briefly jot down, so I can kind of remember what he said. And then I might go to Laura and say, Laura, what is your biggest concern as we move forward? And jot that down and so forth. So each of these will be filled in by a different person on your chart. And we may not have time to complete them all, but it will be okay for those type A people. If you don't get them all done, it will okay. All right, so questions that you have about what we're gonna be doing? All right, begin.
What you do first?
Which one are you going to?
Up to you.
All right, I just need to revise the standards to
So that there's a great place.
I will use it.
All right, Ms. Julie, what's your biggest concern as we proceed?
I said that our agendas interfere with the focus of the meeting.
Which one should I start?
Same thing there.
Okay. What were you thinking?
What's your biggest concern?
Oh, I do a great job. It just got recorded down.
Did well, so we can take action on to make it not as willing and successful on one word.
All right,
Okay.
we do do well, how does it impact our children?
Same way. To ensure students are ready for their 21st century needs.
Social studies, unsite.
All of this.
All right, now, what would you like? All right. What is your greatest goal?
So, I would produce my own working tool, H and their appropriate expectations.
I need the first one. Hey, how are you? Your biggest concern is reducing. If we do well, create a section, provide a great education.
Willing and successful lifelong learners.
All right, you're my last one.
Fantastic.
If we do well, how does this impact our children? I think it's our. I like what you said, I hate it.
You just took that.
Oh, no, I just realized it. You know how like when you start the school year, start posting things, we do this experiment like, I see it done where like southeast or different shapes, so like it's not even coming. And then it's funny, it's matching with other people. You know what I mean, it's just right, so very, you can either compliment one another, or it could be something like that, so have some fun up. Yes, sir.
Morning.
What's your biggest concern? My biggest concern is we get sidetracked away from our work and decide issues that don't impact the children.
It's yours. Thank you.
You got 2 more minutes. Janet?
Foundation
Got it?
strong, I'm through that.
All right. Have a seat. All of the rest change chairs.
Too many things at once there.
Okay, the next thing that I would like for you to do, and I'm going to bring you up to speed on the process. What I'd like for you to do is meet in groups of say 3 or so, and share what you've learned and look for trends or patterns that you're seeing in what the group is saying. And then we'll have just a few minutes to report out. So take 3, 4, 5 minutes to just kind of share with the small group.
I noticed.
So it's the trend in the grade school process.
Social safety amendments.
Yeah. So, we get part of the
Well,
or other kinds
so
of
that's gonna go along with
things that interfere with it.
focus on
We're
what's on
factoring
training.
in inside for school,
State
right?
school board has more action, take
Two
the
big
same.
We don't get finished on it.
So kind of like.
It's easy
Presentation.
for teachers to unpack. It's usable, usable standards.
And the training area that we do well, all of them.
My music store last night. I don't play anymore, really. I play church music, but I don't really play music.
Okay, groups, any trends, patterns that you saw in what people were saying? Go.
Heard a lot of talk about, trying to get an equal emphasis on social studies as compared with other content areas.
So really work to bring it back into the picture.
Grades hope for the process trend was meaningful, relevant, and appropriate.
Kind of those things we talked about yesterday.
Biggest concern is really kind of seem to be swirling around the idea that it's a large task. And that it'll be, in itself, it can be difficult and also hard to stay on task without being sidetracked.
Any other thoughts?
So we'll know if we do this well if we are good responsible citizens. Right, and our K-5 kids are ready for 612. So it's really that foundation.
Yeah, foundation came up a lot across. We're laying a good foundation.
The next thing that we're gonna do is actually get into the standards and take a look at those. As we do that, I can go through the process first, or I can just give you time to look at the standards, and then we can come back and talk about the process, which is your pleasure.
First, I like to know the process first,
Okay.
and that helps me know what I'm doing as I'm going through it, what to look for, and if everybody else is comfortable with that.
Process, we talked about it yesterday, I think it's a good process.
And again, we, changes can be made if you, at any point, if you want to. So this is the protocol.
While you're passing that out, we haven't had a chance to look at our norms yet. So technology norm is just make sure your technology is not in the way of other people. We'll take breaks, and if you need to dehydrate, take your own break. We're operating off of a positive intent, and we're doing a very valuable, worthwhile piece, so we want to make sure that we stay focused and we're working on that. And we want to have a positive regard towards each other. We want to be engaged in what we're doing and share speaking time. And keep in mind, none of us want to be the hog of your time.
Anything to add today? That was kind of what we agreed upon yesterday. Thank you. Okay, this is a protocol that we're going to use, and the first thing that we'll do is we'll begin by looking at one particular domain, and we have the domains are over there. The first one that are in the current, standards there, that is the standard is the principle of the Republic. Okay, so we'll look just at the principle of the Republic. We'll have a sheet like this, which we have from yesterday, but I copied a bunch more in case we need more today. So what you'll do is you'll look at it and it says standard, that you're talking about, page number and so forth, so you'll put that in. And as you look through them, if you see concerns, you're gonna jot it down. If you don't see a concern, it seems absolutely fine for you, you don't do anything. But if you see a concern, maybe the wording is off, maybe you feel like we need something additional here because it isn't thorough enough for what we want for our kids, so you might have an addition. Just, maybe you have a concern about what it really means. Any kind of concerns that you have or questions that you have about it, you're gonna write down here. And then over here on the far end, you're gonna write down area needing discussion. If everybody doesn't have it, you want to pass them out, so you can look at them. I'm just gonna pass them on. So grab a couple if you want.
Are you talking about like the A document, or are you talking about the standards blue document?
No, we're talking about the
So, given that, the other group asked us to look at would like to talk with us about the blue document, does it make sense to maybe look at that before we start into the leaves? Since it's, how do people feel about that?
We did, that was just a reference, we weren't actually, we had just a few copies on the table.
Do people feel like we should do that or not?
This drives this.
Right.
We have to serve it.
That's kind of my feeling too, and especially since the other group asked to discuss. I'm sorry.
No, it's not.
Is there any way I can say something this morning?
Oh, sure.
I really don't know about anybody else, but I had a really rough night last night, tossing and turning and thinking about what's been going on here. I found someone out of Kurt Carr's office. I was trying to find someone yesterday to try to help understand where things are going with these appointees and what's going on. I spoke with Kurt Carr's office and found out that I actually have the list. They gave me several copies, which I can give to everybody, but they gave me a list of who's been appointed, and we only have so far 11 appointees, and I know for a fact that the one that wasn't here yesterday, because there was 10 of us yesterday, Paul Ellison, obviously we all know, he walked out as well. And by the way, I came back yesterday because I went to the speaker's office after leaving and said, I don't feel like this is right, and they asked me to please come back in here and at least be here and sit. So I came, it was very humbling. I appreciate all of you not, I didn't expect that anybody would be rude or anything, but I do appreciate that. But I went to, I got the list of people that have been appointed. There's only been 11 people appointed. And I know everybody was saying yesterday, well, the one person that wasn't here to begin with yesterday that had an appointment, I know, I found out from Kurt Carr's office, isn't here because she couldn't find someone in time to watch her kids. So her voice is not being heard here. And that really concerned me even more. And I feel like many of us were sitting here yesterday. I remember you, Laura, saying, I don't want to go back to the people that sent me here and say to them we didn't get anything done. But from my vantage point, I feel like we go back to the people who sent us and we say we didn't get anything done, but it's not because we weren't ready to work. It was because the legislators in our Missouri State House and Senate didn't do their job and get their appointees in time for us to be able to do the work. I feel like, I don't think that those people that we report to are gonna be mad at us. I think they're gonna be mad at the people who didn't do their job, which is where it should be. And I guess we're all here by invitation of this bill, which was written by Missouri citizens and residents of the state. I'm one of the people who came to this state capitol week after week after week fighting for this bill because I, like so many other parents, and I know educators know that something is wrong in education. And we need a chance in Missouri to do something the right way. And I'm just asking if there's any way to please consider, can we stop? Because you guys, yesterday we said we weren't even gonna go through the standards, and now we're starting to go through the standards, and there's now
six people, or 7 people that aren't here. And it doesn't, I mean, it doesn't follow the integrity or the intent of this bill that brought us all here. And so I'm saying, can we please at least, I mean, our next meeting is what, 10 days from now or something? Is it not possible that we not do any looking at the standards and wait for these other people to be appointed, and at least for the one that was appointed and didn't get a chance to come because she found out so late, before we begin our work? Is there any way we can do that?
What's your concern about us looking at the standards?
Because we're gonna be pressing forward, that because I'm a parent who was involved in fighting for this bill, I understand the intent of the bill. It wasn't just to plow through and, you know, Ms. Pam here said it yesterday, we're not here to develop standards. Well, that's not true. That's not what the bill says. We are to develop standards. We're to look at standards from other states and the public domain in different places. From what I was looking at yesterday, it looks like we're just gonna go through line by line our standards and say, yep, this is good, this isn't good, we don't like this. That's not what the bill says. And so I'm a parent and a citizen. We're all citizens first. You're not educators first, you're citizens and parents first. And so the intent of the bill was that
I'm sorry,
we would,
back to the question. What's your concern about us looking at the standards?
because the intent of the bill wasn't just to look at the standards, it was to develop standards, and it was to develop standards
In the
with
bill,
people
in the
appointed.
bill, does it
with-
say that we're supposed to look at the standards?
I'm sorry, am I being respected? when
No,
you
you're just not
interrupt me?
answering the question.
Well, I am trying to answer the question, but I'm not answering it the way you want me to.
You're not answering the question.
What's your question?
My question is, what is your concern about us looking at the standards?
I'm trying to say what my concern is. Because I know as a parent who helped fight for this bill, the intent was that those appointed wouldn't just look at standards, we would actually develop and work together to write standards. And there's only 9 of us here now, not the full 16. And so for me, just as a Missouri citizen, an American citizen, out of respect for the voice, the one voice, even if it's just the one lady who was supposed to be here, was appointed and couldn't be here, for her one voice, out of respect for that and the intention of the bill, I don't believe we should go on. I'm not saying that there's anything illegal about going forward. I don't think the bill says that there has to be 16 people here, but if we're not gonna go by if we're not gonna stand up for the one, then we truly are not a republic any longer.
So, if I heard you correctly, your concern is that we're gonna be, by looking at the standards, it is setting a foundation for writing new standards.
Well, by looking at the standards without everybody having the opportunity to be here and do it together, at least initially, I recognize, I already know that I found out last night that my husband will be out of town all of next week, which is when we have 2 more meetings, because this is when Desi's got a month and this is when you guys want to meet, because it's on your schedule and it works for you. But I now don't know if I'm going to be able to be here. But by the way that things are going, it's really apparent that it doesn't matter. And I feel like for us to forge forward, I hope this is on record, we're basically saying to the citizens of Missouri, what you fought for in this bill really doesn't matter. We're just gonna push through with the agenda that Desi has for us, and we're gonna approve what we've got here, and we're gonna move on.
Can I pull out, because I'm not sure, you just gave an agenda to a whole group that nobody else even spoken about. So I think it's hard for.
What's the agenda?
I'm sorry, just take a step, you just said your agenda, what you just laid forth was, it sounds like the agenda is that we're just going to push through, we're just gonna do everything. So far this morning, most of us haven't had a chance to kind of talk out, so if you listen to you lay out what you want to see as an agenda, but we haven't even talked about, all we've talked about so far is looking at the standard. So the idea that we're just going to follow, and anybody else, nobody has laid out anything other than we're going to be looking at writing standards. You also keep discussing the intent of the law, all we have is the actual law. So each person is gonna judge an intent and how they wanna look at intent. Intent is something that's very difficult to judge unless you ask exactly what it is that's coming out of those things, and each person may interpret certain intents a different way. Our intention, and my intention as an educator, I can only speak for me, is I wanna make sure that what we do is what's best for our kids. The rest of the stuff, I'm not that concerned with. I wanna get the best standards for the best things for our students, because when I look at these things, what I'm thinking of is not only my 4 children that I have at home, but the 565 that I have in my school building right now. So if you were to ask me, am I an educated person? I don't separate educated parent. I think separate, it's all part of who I am. Because to some kids right now, I'm still Mr. Fisher, and other kids I'm Dad. So, so as I'm listening to you, there's a lot of things that are being put, I feel like they're being put into my mouth, and all I really want to do is to make sure we've got the best things for our students. What I feel like we've been tasked with is to determine the standards in social studies that our kids are going to learn in the future. And that's what I like to do. I hope, right now, we may not have everybody here, but if we can forge and get our work done, we can still get the best work we can get done. I don't have a problem doing that. I understand we may want that, and it's not our last meeting. So everybody's going to have that chance to still have an impact. We're not finishing a final product right now. So as long as we can still get some work done, as you said before, it's not illegal. We can do all those things. We can start a process of looking at standards, start a process of getting some stuff done. I don't see a downside to getting some things done. Again, all I can do is from my own viewpoint. If I can't be here one day, I would hope that nobody else is held up. I would hope that everybody else is continue working. If someone wants to fight for it, I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to get the work done for our students and for the kids that are going to be educated, not for any other reason.
All I asked was that we hold off actually looking at standards until, to consider doing that until all of the people that are being appointed at least have an opportunity to say, I can be there, I can't be there.
And I think you brought up a good point. We're just starting this, we had 6 days laid out. So everybody's going to be given an opportunity to have input. This isn't like you're gonna be written in stone today. So I think they'll have time and an opportunity if they choose to come. And I feel the same way. If I'm not here, I would hope the rest of you would go on, because I don't
Right,
want
but
my
you're-
absence to limit this process. That's okay.
But you're here at the start, which I guess is what I don't understand. That I'm not asking us to not do the ultimate work. All I'm saying is, from the very beginning, we don't have the people, the other people that aren't here don't have an opportunity to say, hey, I'm not there, don't stop the work without me. They didn't have a chance to do that. You and I have the luxury of saying, hey, future, if I'm not here, obviously you can't wait for me to keep going. But they don't have that luxury. And what I don't understand, especially because I'm sitting in this social studies standards writing, is the voice of the individual, the voice of one not being recognized because the majority wants to move forward. I don't understand that. And it's not about, I want the same thing you want. I have kids in the public school. I have kids. I see every day what they're doing, and I'm thinking, what is going on in education in Missouri? Something is wrong. So we want the same thing. All I'm asking, because you guys, even in the thing that we did, the words foundation, setting the right foundation about the whole standards process. For me, and I realize I'm just one of the 9 of us. I'm the only one here that has a problem. But what I'm hearing is, too bad. You're the only one. But I believe the foundation being set isn't right. And that is a concern that I share with every single one of you, but it's in a different kind of a way. It's the foundation of starting off right so that as a voice, we can all say, yeah, we had a hand in this and we're all for this. And right now, you're not giving 5, 6 other people that chance. That's where all I'm asking is that we not move forward and then go back home and say, we couldn't get anything done because the people we've elected didn't do their job and didn't get things done in time.
I'm just not sure I believe that. I think we could get some stuff done.
But I'm not saying we can't.
So I mean, you're asking me to go back home and say something, I'm probably not gonna say it, because I don't believe it.
But if we don't, if you consider that there's supposed to be 16 of us here and only 10 came, then you could go back and say we couldn't get anything done because those who we voted into office didn't do their job to make their appointees in time.
I understand your point, I'm just saying I don't necessarily agree with you.
I'm just finding it really odd and interesting that we're in a social studies standards writing and
the voice of the few, meaning me, one, is just being overridden and mowed down because the majority rules. And I just didn't think that that was what a republic was.
Actually, it says right here, standards it is, principles of the Republic in the United States, explain and apply the concept of majority rule. We learned that in second grade.
But we're a republic.
Exactly, what you just said.
What's your
believe in the
understanding
rights
of a republic?
We're governed by the rule of law.
Right, so in what way? How are decisions made?
Well, I mean, that's kind of the open question, maybe we could be a little more specific.
Sure. Are decisions made democratically in a republic?
We are representative, we have representatives
And how are those representatives chosen?
through an elected vote.
And how do
Well,
they
and
make
the
how do they make
presidential
decisions?
election is through the electoral college, so we have different levels of how, but it's a constitutional republic with
It's actually a
representatives.
constitutional democracy.
No, we're not.
Yeah,
we're
it's
not a
constitutional
constitutional
democracy. They're equivalent.
No, they're not. If they were the same, then we wouldn't be talking about different, we would be talking about the same thing, but a democracy and a republic are not the same.
I didn't say they were. I said a constitutional democracy and a republic are the same thing. Federalists
We just
understand James Madison.
fundamentally believe differently, so I understand, just for the record, do what you're gonna do today, that's fine, I was gonna sit here and, but I'm glad that this is being recorded, because I want citizens of the state to know that, you were appointed to be here, and others are to be appointed to be here, but they don't get to be here, and it doesn't matter. So I appreciate you giving me the time, I was hopeful that maybe there would be open conversation, but I appreciate your time, thank you. You can move.
I think the part that makes me okay with moving forward is the fact that this is all recorded. And that, when we meet the next time, whoever, as they get the names, we'll just get them connected through, the recording website and whatnot, so they can see what we've done, they can see our documents, and then they can, look through that and think through that as well. If we need to revisit something, then I think that's a point to revisit.
Sure.
So
Absolutely.
we all have to be open, right, so we all have to be open to revisiting, the next time we meet, so we can make sure that we're, hearing all the voices as well. I think this protocol process is, I've used it, when working with teachers in our home district, so I think it's a good process. The question I would have, is, I guess my understanding, and Tanya, I was up here, talking to the representatives as well. If we were gonna have to have, everything thrown out, or if we were going to go come to a compromise, I came up here multiple times and talked to representatives, so I too was here, and I understand that. And I'm very passionate about this process. My understanding is that we don't have to throw everything out if we, find that we're satisfied with what we have. So part of this is modification, part of it's revision. We may have some deletions or some additions. Is everyone, is there something inherently wrong with the standards that the Missouri citizens wrote a few years ago? I mean, is there something pushing us that we need to start with a different document?
Craig, just in terms of, clarification, which, when you say the standards, are you talking about the blue sheet? Are you talking about the clean?
Well, from the show me standards to the GLEAD, they were all written by Missouri citizens.
Mhm.
So is there anything in that set of documents that are inherently,
Are you asking whether we should start with Missouri or start looking at other states?
right, I mean, yes, that would be a good question. So should we start with the Missouri documents? Or are they so ill reputed that we don't want to start with them? I mean, that's an honest question.
Does everybody have a copy? I just texted and asked them to bring us enough blue copies so everybody has their.
Just real quick, I know this is a little bit off, but I think there's one thing, I don't know, even just working with groups of people, one of the things with norms, that I've looked at, but I feel like as we kind of move forward might be effective, do we need to have some sort of a norm for how we determine if we don't agree on everything? Like a process where if we have a disagreement, how we're gonna move forward through that disagreement, so we don't get sidetracked and deal with disagreement that ends up keeping us off our work. So how do we actually come to some sort of a process? And I know that a lot of times we're going, that's the hard thing, it's one thing I have all of our PLCs do, in my building, is come up with, if we don't all agree, how do we reach it, how do we determine and move on? So we need to create, part of our norming process, a way for us to continue to move on even if we don't agree.
There's a process built into this protocol that helps us when we actually look at some standards. There's a process built in there. We need more than that. Would that be?
Another thing is, that I've used in the past, just to offer an option, would be this to 5. So, you know, you can kind of poll the group, how many people, you know, can support this 100%, and that would be 5. How many of you can support it, with a little reservation? That would be your 4. 3 is, you can write that if you want to use it, and we don't have to use it, I'm just presenting an option. 3 would be, I can use it, but I've got a lot of reservations about it. 4 would be, I really don't support it. 5 would be, I'll undermine it.
You're going the wrong way.
You have 5, 4, 3, 2, 4, 5.
I'm telling you numbers that I am not looking at. Anyway,
So one's the lowest,
We get it.
you're completely opposed to it.
yeah, and I'm gonna undermine the work we've done. So that kind of lets you see where people are. I don't care if we use that, that's just an option. There is also in the program.
Right, we may not feel like we do that, just thinking that, is there a way, just so we can make sure, whatever it is, whether we use the fist to 5, but then, because even then, if we're still in a situation where we know we may have a little still of a disagreement, how do we continue to move forward, or do we not want it? Do we want to just stay with it until we find some sort of a conclusion? I'm good either way, I'm just saying we may want to have something, just because there may be times where, but I also make it safe, so people feel safe to be able to voice those opinions about not agreeing with something, or they have a difference of opinions. But then once we come down to, if we agree to disagree, how do we continue to move forward?
So when reasonable, if when we agree to disagree, just to write both options down and wait till everyone is here to revisit those there. I mean, I like what you said earlier, it's modifying and revising as we go. So if we can brainstorm and come up with enough things, it's not like we have to keep one and throw the rest off the table. We can just duly note, these were the 2 or 3 things, this was the majority, this wasn't, these are options, and go on, or we wanna get held up on every little thing along the way.
We won't get anything.
Exactly. So if this is more just like a brainstorming session to get things rolling and like kind of lay a rough outline where we're going, or we want to be specific.
I even meant just as a group, like even if, including everyone, even just a group of 9, like even right now, if we're talking, like right now, if we wanted to determine whether or not we want to continue, we want to move on, and how we're gonna have that process, and then as more people come, the process would be filled regardless of how many people are going to work here. Just so we have a way to kind of continue to move forward.
So we just vote?
Patrick, how about if I go through the protocol?
Okay.
And you guys decide if we need to add something to that, because that, I think, might answer some of your questions. And then everybody has a copy, right? Okay, great.
So right before you get to that, can we just finish the other questions on the table? Is there something wrong with our current standards where we don't want to start there, or do we need to start at a different place?
For me, I feel comfortable starting with what we have. And also think, not to say that there aren't other standards we'll want to look at throughout the process.
Right.
myself personally, from starting where we are and thinking about the teachers that I work with, I think helping them transition to another, maybe better set of standards for the future would be easier if those are based off of something else as a transition, instead of just throwing them completely out. That's not to say there aren't some revisions that I would like to see personally that I think can be brought in from other areas. So that's just my opinion.
And since we already have like 10 days till our next meeting, we could just look at these today, and then we have that time to visit different sources and different things, and then we would be able to bring that to the table and say, hey, I found this from, Alaska, or from New York, or whatever, what are your thoughts? Would that be doable? Unless we want to spend our time today looking at other things plus this.
What do you think, Julie?
I think until we examine what we have and determine the good, the bad, and the ugly of that, looking at other things is just a distraction.
At the first.
At the beginning, exactly. My personal way of processing is when I don't understand something, I don't agree with something, I don't see the relevance of something as I go, I can take my own time later to go in and look for it and research. I did a lot of that last night, looking at definitions, looking at processes, trying to gain understanding. If we're truly wanting this to be a Missouri document, I think looking at other states, looking at other work that people who don't have a vested interest in Missouri have created first is a distraction. But if I see something here that I don't like the way it's worded, I might go out and look for someone who's got something developed that better suits
What you're looking for in your
what you have.
Basically the same thing. I like to start with what I have and look at it and mark things up and just, okay, this is questionable, this I don't like completely. But just because I don't like it doesn't mean I want to throw it out. It may fit in someplace else. It may be manipulated to go in there. I mean, it's one of those things. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Just because it's good for New York or for California doesn't mean it's good for Missouri. And that's a big problem out there. That's part of the Common Core problem there. But we have tools available. We have standards already. Let's take a look at those, see what's good, bad, ugly, and build our base from there. And if we have to add, we add. If we have to throw stuff out, we're gonna throw it out. But the whole thing is we've got documents here that we can take a look at right now and say, let's proceed. And we're not hiding anything. I have a hard time dealing with some agendas that are being pushed on me here. When I came in with the understanding we're going to take a look at what's good for our kids in the classroom and our teachers and what we have and what we need to improve on. That's why I left earlier. I'm a very positive thinking person, and to see something like this right now being held up on some things, I'm going to speak my mind here. We're here to look at it, no matter how many people we have right now. Let's go forward with it and get something done here, because I don't want to go back and say I just wasted 2 days of my life. And I understand your concerns. I respect your concerns. But we're here. We have some things that we can look at. Let's get some stuff started, share with the group when we come together later again.
I do think it's important to look at anchors first, because I think we could get really bogged down in each grade level staying under that anchor. But, I think we did a lot of talking about what we as a group believe is important in terms of social studies and looking at do the anchors we have in place match that? Are there things missing? But I think overall, having worked a lot in standards and curriculum writing and looking at standards all across the country, there's usually more similarities than there are differences. And so I think using as a starting place our own standards really isn't that far off the mark in terms of looking at others, but there's also some really great things I think about other places, and to not consider that perspective, I think would be negative. But I think as a starting place, but I do think it's better to start with the anchors than rather just to start looking at each grade level and pulling apart, because that we could be here for months and months.
I agree also. I mean, this is a starting point. It's what we have. And we, as educators, most of us have looked at this plenty of times and we understand what it is. But I think it is still something that needs to be looked at with different eyes. Because as a teacher, you're looking at it one way, we need to look at it in a different way. It's what the end result is going to be rather than how we're going to teach it.
I would like what Kathy just said. I think whether how we feel about anything with the Common Core, or everything, for me, one of the benefits was one of the positives that they did with the process, what they started and went backwards design. So I do think if we're looking at the anchors, we also have to think on what is that finished product that we're looking for, and what is it that we want, and then work backwards design. So I think as we're starting to think about those anchor standards, I think that is where we have to start. And we have to start thinking about the kind of discussion we started having yesterday as we walked around, and what is it when these kids are graduating high school? What is it that we want them to know? And how do we start? And I know we just said we want to kind of not necessarily talk there, but I think that's where we first have to start looking at ours, and then kind of think, well, okay, so now when we're there, how do we start building that foundation, and how does it look K-5? So I know you're not keeping your points that the secondary folks that came in earlier, I do think we want to start our work before we bring them in, but just that idea, at least have a vision of where you're going with this in the longer term aspect. So I really like that we started with anchor standards. I think it makes sense to look at Missouri, and I can see it starting there. And then as we start to come up with things, we're looking to change and some other things, looking for other ideas from other places. What are some pieces that we may not be considering because in our own frame of reference, all we've actually seen a lot of this is Missouri, unless we've gone out and sought out other states' standards. We're much more familiar with the Missouri standards, so there may be pieces that we're just not seeing in our frame of reference, and we can't see them in the forest for the trees. So we want to then bring some of those pieces in at a different time. I think it would still make sense to start with what we've got.
I think starting with ours would be okay.
I just read the building says to the level. I'm not an expert. I think that we need to definitely look beyond just what we have. I personally, as a parent, am not satisfied with what Missouri standards are for history and government and education. So I would be very disappointed that all we did was go through our current standards and mark what we like and what not, but not look at other states and other things in the public community. I have a question, just because it's been a while since I've asked this. There is an organization, a national council, do they have standards?
They do.
or-
They have, it's more of a framework than it is a standard in the sense of like CLE or CLE, but they're just a larger framework for looking at of what social studies is. In fact, this, 2-3 years ago, they rolled out something called C3, which is, again, it's more along this lines. And it's college, career, and civic life, basically, and how the social studies can help prepare young people for those.
So that might be something.
As another date to consider, absolutely.
Right. I brought a copy of C2 just so if somebody wanted to see it approved, that they could. And it's a good document.
It
It's
is.
really a lot about process.
Yep. And as we talked a little bit yesterday, there's always 20% rate skills. Also has, I think, some things that are of merit that we want to consider at some point, or possibly consider. And so there's multiple in other states. I participated in this same process in Ohio several years ago.
Here's my, I think, my overriding concern is, in 2 years, our teachers are going to see a change. And the part that, potentially they could have 4 new sets of standards that are completely new. The closest we can, if we can keep close to our, this is just my thinking, if we can keep close to our, the way ours is set up, the framework is set up, it will be much easier for our teachers to adapt. Because teachers already are going to, 2 years from now, potentially could be a train wreck in the state, between assessment and instruction. So the closest we can keep it to what they are accustomed to using, that would be a benefit for all of our kids. Because we all know when a teacher is stressed out, instructional decisions aren't the best instructional decisions. So that's also my thinking, at start with what we have and see what are the deficiencies of what we have. Is there a reason to change the way it's structured? We may change some of the pieces inside it, but the way it's structured would be a question.
Can I ask a question? Are we gonna ask the same question once all the members go through the year, or is it gonna be decided today and we move on?
I think we established that yesterday, that anytime we need to back up, we will back up.
I'm just saying, what's, I mean, for me, what are we gonna do then? If other members think we should look at something else first, but we've already started this. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate, and what if other people come in and say, well, I don't like what we have for standards, and we wanna look at Massachusetts, or we wanna look at some other state, or I wanna look at one of these that you guys are talking about. Are we gonna say, well, no, we've already determined that this is the process, the way we're gonna do it, we'll look at those later, or are we gonna say, okay, well, let's talk about that, why do we wanna do that, are we gonna come back and do that? Is just the question I'm asking.
Process is gonna be changed. I mean, we're not putting anything in concrete here. We need to take a side road and come back to the main road later. That's the ideal line, but we gotta have a starting point somewhere.
I think there's two things would be. One, what we're kind of talking about right there is a hypothetical situation, so it's hard to say what someone might or might not say. So it's hard to deal right now with a hypothetical situation. But then the other side of that would be, if there's something that I personally, all I can say is that I would be open to, if someone else had another idea that could help make these better, I don't know if there's any reason not to do something that could make them better. So if there's something that someone else comes in with that I'm not thinking of, and they say, this might help make this the best for our students, I'm not one that, I would rather have too much information than not enough. So if someone comes in with an idea that I'm not thinking about, I think that's always something that we should stop and consider if we get something like, rather than, I just keep, go in my head, I picture, I don't wanna run down a forest, start chopping down trees, and then realize we've been headed in the wrong direction for a mile, for a year, and then turn and come back. So if someone has something that can provide a better compass, then we would wanna use that. But right now, I think we have to find that place that we start in which direction. And then if we have to bring in some other information, we can just take it as it comes.
And Pam, does the question that I kind of covered that? Would that not be relevant when something like that happens? Okay.
I would agree and say that, if we wanted in the future to come in with another set of standards, part of what is our responsibility to do is say why those would be better than the ones we already have. And before we could do that, we need to look at what we've got. And so, just to be responsible in terms of just not wholesale adopting something else or even parts of something else, we need to know first what we have in hand. And so for me, that means we need to look at what we have in hand first. And maybe what happens is we find deficiencies and then find other areas, other standards, other frameworks that help fill in those deficiencies that we have.
Part of, last night as I was laying in bed, I too, Johnny, did not sleep well. Including all the Coke I drink, I'm not sure. The part of what I thought through last night is the general consensus of the room was one of the biggest problems with social studies is time. We're not even doing a good job of teaching the standards we currently have because the time and pressure of math and ELA overwhelms our schedules, and we're not doing a good job of the science or social studies. So time is really our enemy when it comes to what we're teaching. So that's another reason I would love to just look at, well, what should we be teaching, and what do we need to add to that, or is there something that we need to take away? But in a way, I'd love to think through when we add practices that are recommended practices, just like we do with the 8 math practices. It'd be great to, and maybe that's part of the C3 piece, is that gives us some practices that we could recommend. Here are some things that we could recommend.
So Craig is our liaison. Where do you go? What's our first step?
I think we look at what we have, we just start building forward on, so we know what we have. And after we know what we have, then we're open to whatever's out there that we can use as a resource.
That's what I was hearing around the table. Everyone else largely.
Copy of the film.
It is. I did look back at that language, it's because it's part of the bolded, part of the bill, it says whenever the State Board of Education develops, evaluates, modifies, or revises, so the limit, it's not limited to just develop standards. It's all of those things.
So if we start with looking at our existing standards, we want to start, I think as Laura said, with what's kind of the covering piece, which is the blue mat, and especially since the high school group has asked to discuss that with us at a later date. Does that make sense to everyone? That we look first at this.
If we can get to part of the principles of the public,
By the way, do you know what the name of the Principles of the Republic standard was before it was Principles of the Republic? Principles of Constitutional Democracy. And none of the standards, none of the individual standards ever changed. It was just the title of that strand.
Yeah. No doubt about that, yes.
Okay, so what I'm hearing, to paraphrase, is that we want to go on and start looking at home. And then as we do that, and we have questions about things, perhaps bring in additional resources to look at, maybe in just particular areas. We've got an area we don't like and we want to pull that in. I would be happy to designate copies of that for everyone if people want it.
That's online too.
Yeah, C3's online.
Oh, it's online, so you might just go online and make your own copy or take a look at it, because that would be one resource, and then we can go from there. But right now, what we want to start doing is start looking at the standards that are on the blue placement and how we feel about those. Is that summarizing appropriately? And I did call and ask for different placements.
and we're not looking at process skills, right? We're just looking at the social studies content.
That's the one front side.
All right,
We're looking at this.
7
The
social
content
studies.
standard.
And social studies.
So that's online as well.
Back here.
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
Yes, that placement is
And
on.
it insists constitutional democracy in it.
And actually, I don't know, check, I was gonna say, we can check with other things.
Yeah, this has to.
I think 06 was the last time it's been.
And it's all.
I'm gonna work with this thing. So
Science.
During my research, I thought
oh, let's see if I can do this. Oh,
What is it?
very cool. I figured they merged it.
Google Chrome,
Technology,
Ah,
we're under
well, now it's
discussion.
like PowerPoint, not just presentation, so you can,
oh.
I got Word on here and PowerPoint.
I'm not converting anyone, I don't work for people yet. I'm gonna say. It's all here, and it says online, you don't need thumb drives, it's like, okay.
You-
That was my positive take.
Terrific.
Very good.
Okay, carry on with reports then.
Alright, so the knowledge standards are online.
Everybody has something, yeah, because I can be glad.
Well, and the content standards run along they're the number from, I think we all.
I can do it online.
This is not really very good for me.
So we're gonna go through the protocol with this, will you go through the protocol?
And again, this can change, this isn't written in stone, it's just one that, and you should have a copy in front of you, so I just blew this one out, I didn't even have it, and this was a drama for me, but anyway. What we would recommend with this protocol is that you review a section, you have this sheet right here, and if something, since it's really in standards, if the standard looks okay to you and you like the way it's written and it seems straightforward and you think it's important, don't do anything. If on the other hand, you have some questions about it, or you want additional information about it, or you feel like we should discuss it further, then you're gonna jot it down on here. Okay. Once everyone has had an opportunity to look at that carefully and make their notations, then what we would do after you complete the feedback input document, we would just start somewhere and say, we started with Alden and say, Alden, would you share your first concern with us? So Alden would share that, and then one by one around the group, everyone would have an opportunity to ask just clarifying questions, so that you understand what his concern is and how he's feeling about that. And then we come back to Alden and say, so Alden, where are you now? Is that still a concern for you? Is that something that you're wanting to see us change at this point, or are you feeling more comfortable with it? And at that point, we could do a thumbs up, thumbs down. How many people feel like they would like to see us stay there? How many people still have questions and feel like you need to do something with it? So that we can see by the will of the group where that is. Then, so that's called a consensus check. Then, if further discussion is needed, we discuss it again. And again, each person's voice is heard. We go around so that everyone has an opportunity to provide their thinking. Discussion questions might be, and we could add some more, or we can come up with them at the time. What would this expectation look like in the classroom? How might the expectation ensure a student is college or career ready? How might we explain the importance of the standard to parents and students? Or how would we justify that this standard is as it is, type of thing. And then we do another consensus check. How many people now are feeling comfortable with it? How many people are not feeling comfortable with it? If the majority are not feeling comfortable with it, then what we're gonna do is we're gonna write it on a Post-it note. We're gonna put it up here on our chart paper up here. People will have an opportunity on a different colored Post-it note to write down what their concerns are, or they can come and write them up here underneath the Post-it note. Okay, so that's how that concern will be documented, that we, this majority feel like it's a problem. If even just one person, let's say everybody else agrees it's fine as is, but Alden over here is saying, no, it's not there with me. We can do a Post-it note for that too, and put further discussion by it, so that it's something we might want to revisit later after we've done some more work. So the point is to try to get everybody's voice in the room on everything that we do, and to document people's concerns, and then when the group has a concern, go on and we can even do wordsmith. We might want to wordsmith that because we just don't think it's clear. So we could write our recommendation as to how it can be rewritten. Or we could say we feel it needs to be left out and leave another one in place, but I mean, it could be the full range of what you want to do. Or it may just be that you want to, just wordsmith a little bit. So whatever that concern is, and we'll just write that down. That will be kind of our running copy. Of course, we'll have notes in the video as well, but we'll keep all of those over time so that we can always go back and reference. So then there's the next consensus check, and then again, items of continued concerns. Participants who have concerns are asked to make suggestions for modifying, revising on the post-it note, which we'll put up. Post-it note suggestions are placed on the chart. The recorder documents the number of suggestions that we have. The facilitator will read the comments. We can have more discussion if we want to. We can do another consensus check on where we are. And so it's kind of 3 different times for consensus check built in, plus an opportunity, even if you're the only person with a concern, to make sure that that's noted and you have it up there. Questions? It's a little easier once we go through it.
It's just really being deliberative and making sure everyone scores on it.
Right. And that if there's a concern, even if it's just one concern, we document it by
Absolutely.
posting it up there, and then, people can, who have a little bit of concern, maybe not enough to take it out, but if you have a little something you would suggest, you can put that up there. And then or you can write it on the chart. So we'll probably, at the most, have 2 post-its per chart, so there's plenty of room to add, come back, and then.
Part of the waiver of the No Child Left Behind was that we had the college and career rating standards. Right? So I mean, if there's 3 things for our citizens there, we get waived out of No Child Left Behind, so I think it's vital that we continue to make sure we have that piece in there. There's a rewriting standards that part of what we have to look at is making sure that we're keeping the college and career rating aspect and everything through it too.
I think a lot of the things you all were discussing yesterday too kind of brought to the surface things that we want to keep at the forefront. And of course, the main purpose being it's all about our kids and making sure they're prepared for the future.
Do we have those, can we email those pictures out?
That we took of the charts. Yes. In fact, Toby, would you email me those, and when I do the distribution list tonight, I will send them to you. As part of that as an attachment, or if you don't get it the first time, I'll attach it the second time, which is my unfortunate habit to do. So. Questions, things you'd like to change about the protocol? Okay. Barring that, I would say let's go and look at the blue placemats and using your things. Let's say I'll check back with you in a half an hour at about 10 till 10 and see where we are now, what time we need. Okay.
You guys just have access to the church.
This is an old updated scrap.
I need to go buy some.
This is actually a clean Kleenex. It's just-
Well, I prefer a clean one.
Everything's water.
Yeah, let's see if I gotta use one there.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Let's use mine. Sorry.
I looked at, correlated them to the dealings, 1, 2, and 3 are switched around. The 2 is actually the 3 in the GLEs, and the 3 is actually the 2 in the GLEs. So.
Right. And just the social studies group. vote on them. I'm gonna grab some coffee real quick. I'll see if I can rustle up some Kleenex for you too.
Make sure they're used.
These teeth are fun. No, looking at the communities and the food, I just said, so. So wow. I was looking at this teacher and going, whoa, you know.
I remember teaching off of.
So you just
I
went
remember.
Maybe this
They
one.
would feel like-
Oh, no.
It's just one percent.
Some of them are too gentle. You know,
It's a 7-page, it just has a one chart image on each page.
Okay.
I'm gonna send it right now to you.
No, I just, this is initial set. We'll just look at it. So we- Anyway, I was just looking out of curiosity after I finished the blue paper, so.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Wow.
Oh, thank you so much.
No worries. No worries.
No more complicated.
No, I'm fine. I'm perfectly fine.
What's that?
We're looking at that one blue square.
There's, right on the side, it's right here.
Okay.
Just drop it in the work. There are two apples in that place.
I was like, they were gonna marry.
When we talk about social studies, what do we mean? Is it just history? Is it history?
No, in elementary, a lot of history.
That's what I
Because
guess
you
you
study the base of everything. But also, I know, I used to be in kindergarten when we had social studies, and we taught about working together, where rules made, community.
Right.
First grade we do community,
Those are all in there.
service,
They're all
service
in the existing
oriented.
standards.
Yeah, I just, when I look at this, what stands out a lot of it, other than, it feels like a lot of it is history based.
History based.
And I'm just, so I'm just kind of curious, is when we talk about social studies, like even if you didn't look into this and you just said, what is social studies, or what are the aspects that we don't feel are vital with social studies, what is that we're actually doing, like in our own words,
Right.
how do we make sense of what we're talking about?
Yeah, we get, some of us had a little side conversation yesterday that when you talk to social studies teachers, they'll often call themselves history teachers instead of social studies.
Right.
Although I think as I look at these, you could break down different lines by, okay, obviously number 5 is geography, right? Number 4 is economics. Then there's 2 that are probably government. 1 is history. 1 is sort of sociology, culture, and then the inquiry tools. So I mean, I think the standards are trying to, but there's in the overall sense of social studies teachers, they gravitate more towards history because it's internationally, it is the elephant in the room.
And I think because they're articulated separately, you know, for me, I think historical figures or historical events or time periods provide a nice framework to say, so what was going on during this economically? What's the how's geography impact what was going on in this issue or this event? And how do the relationships between individuals or groups impact what was going on there? But I think because it's visually delineated, sometimes teachers think that it's supposed to be delineated that way because it's all separate from
Right.
how things have been laid out in the past. And so they don't automatically think about connecting them.
You know, wasn't the term popular yesterday, thematic units? I mean, thematic units is, to me, is one of the best way to teach you anything, because you relate everything into a, like you just said, you've got a time period in history, and then you can literally take it apart, what is happening here. And I think it was with all, and I had a conversation yesterday, you know, how can you really understand American history unless you have studied European history? You know, freedom of speech. It's a concept that everybody goes around, but freedom of speech is not the only fire in a crowded auditorium. You know, it's a simple example as that. But what makes freedom of speech such a valuable right that you have in this country that other people don't even you know, it's hard for Americans to believe that you have the right to speak out against the president. Give you a perfect example. When I first moved here, I was 16 years old. I got fully immersed in American culture. In Germany, you didn't speak out against an official. Even in modern Germany, if you had a complaint, you went through the proper channels. Saturday Night Live blew my mind.
Especially in
As it
the
should.
And I mean, literally, I would sit there and my wife and girlfriend, they would laugh at that stuff, and I'm sitting there just going, "You can't do that." You know, the whole concept of that was foreign to me.
That was even with network censorship.
Yes. I mean, literally. But then again, some of the censorship that was here wasn't nowhere near. So again, I had to adjust. But just that example right there, Saturday Night Live is the thing that sticks in my mind. That freedom of speech amounts to the fact that if you don't like something about whatever, you can make fun of it. You know, you can't personally attack anybody, but there's a concept right there. Freedom of speech. Does it have limits? Yes. So how do we get that into the social studies events? Well, you got to refer back to the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. You know, it's one of those things, and a lot of it is history. Because of this is what we have now. And like I said, when I taught so to speak, taught the social studies book from the back to the front, we made everything that was in there relevant. Why did we have the Industrial Revolution? Why did the Civil War start? And we looked at all the aspects of it. But you said something too, teaching strategies. So that's going to change. That's going to have to change. And when we do these standards right here, we're going to have to count that. How are we going to get teachers to implement this?
Can I ask you real quick? I think you have one, I apologize, but as like the social studies curriculum coordinator for your district. Okay, so if someone said to you, what do you mean by social studies, how would you answer that?
We want to lay a foundation for kids as they are thinking about real life issues, that they'll think through multiple perspectives, that they'll think through multiple people perspectives, they'll think through a geographical perspective, they'll think through an economic perspective, they'll think through a social cultural perspective, a governmental perspective. I just think it's important to look at things from different perspectives, I guess.
What I thought was, what I liked about what you just said, honestly, is that you mentioned about people and about learning of people. And I think, like, I think in some ways, as I read through these, I think that's the part that sometimes I feel like it's maybe missing, is the understanding of people, and that's where the history comes in. How did they become where we are, and how do we get to the various aspects? So I think that humanist culture part of it is the part that I think, as I was reading that, I feel like it was something that wasn't in this that I couldn't quite put my finger on. And I think that one of them even on this is it discusses how do people treat each other, how do families, there's 4 main topics. I think they just, my personal, as I read through this, they seem, when you're talking about, so I keep thinking social, I think socialism, other people. And I feel like in some ways, it's in the, maybe number 6. But I think it just seems different that was the theme in which you just laid out everything you said was through learning about people.
And that's how we put it on chart yesterday too. You know, it was a lot of social interaction and different perspectives, and kind of what you said, that was the theme I got from all around. So then when I pick this up as a teacher and I go, okay, principles express through documents, how am I gonna relay that to kids? Where's the human aspect in? You know, that's tough. So I think just the format in which they are written could be more.
Principles expressed by people in document shape. I mean, you can literally just, because that's what it is. You know?
Is everyone finished and ready to, no,
Yeah, in my class, that people mentioned in social studies method is one of the things that I emphasize, especially for elementary educators, that when you're teaching geography, you're not teaching, you're not doing you should be doing is, how do people interact with geography and how does geography impact people? And you do that with all the social sciences, whether it's economics, history, how do you have people interacted over time? And what does that tell us about how people will interact in the future? Same with government, how do people interact with their government? How does the government impact you? So I completely agree, with that perspective. That the importance of is relating, and that gives relevance it conveys relevance to what could otherwise just be, abstract concepts. Because it's how do I impact, right? And then if you use that expanding horizons model, we're starting with the child at kindergarten and expanding out as their awareness and their developmental appropriateness, which we talked about, as that grows, then we can start expanding that concept.
How many of you guys' schools do something with like character?
We used to,
So you have no character ed at all?
not the last 3 or 4 years because we don't have time for it. I mean, to me, that was one of the best programs we had.
Or would you have?
Character
Character plus?
Yeah, I think so. But that was one of the best things we used, and then all of a sudden it was like, no, we gotta concentrate on this and this, and it's like, don't have time for that.
We did it through historical figures actually. So there's a character plus a person in every building, and so we kind of use that program as a framework. But the representative in the building meets with the bigger district committee once a month, and then from that committee recommends to teachers, here are people over in history that you could use to kind of share who demonstrated this trait, this way, and then they recommend a book list that you can use, and then there's a student of character and a staff member of character each month that's chosen, and they do a write-up on how that person demonstrates those character traits.
How many times a week do you do that?
It's once a month, it's a monthly focus, so as a district, we have a character trait every month. But as part of that, those people share that information, but then it's up to the teacher to decide when they pull that into their monthly curriculum.
If, we use PBIS, but we combine with PBIS, I'm not the character traits. So,
You like 8 character words.
we have 8 character words, I don't know.
Responsibility, trust, perseverance. What's your character plus word?
Respect.
What is PBIS?
Positive behavior.
Elementary uses will be a safe, respectful, responsible, and timely.
Right, respectful, responsible.
So when my son did his
Ready.
social studies study guide last week, that was part of it. So they integrate that in with almost everything.
So people may be adding it, but it's not directly.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. That was the thing that surprised me when I came to Missouri was how strong, 6 years ago, the character, especially in the St. Louis area, character plus was, but it wasn't really represented in the standards. I think there's one GLE that kind of lays out kind of character standards. But so it was really surprising. And so one of the first things I did was like, well, how did this happen? How is it that so many schools in this region use character plus? And we thought they had a great funding stream. And I think they also tapped into a need that teachers have identified in the building as well.
Do you guys have any sort of academic, or called academic, or behaviors to support learning? That are part of the report card? That they're not explicitly defined.
We changed ours. This is the second year, I guess, of a revision where they're really focused on learning versus classroom management. Actually, I don't know how to say it, but it was about what not to do instead of what to do.
Okay.
And so, it's titled behaviors that promote learning instead of work skills and city habits or whatever. That's now the title on the Harvard report.
I'm just trying to look at a way that we can start, if we're looking for relevance, I think that's honestly, I mean, if I just take a step out of this committee and look at it from a principal standpoint, I got a phone call yesterday because we have a parent that is trying to figure out how to get intensive reading support to their kid. And you know what's gonna happen, they're gonna get pulled out of social studies, and we're gonna concentrate in social studies. So if that's, and so starting to think it, but I also know that like for us as a school, we use, Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, so that's what we, we're woven into, it's woven into what we actually teach kids, it's woven into what we do with kids, and so as I look at it, a lot of schools like here, I feel like it's a trend kind of moving back towards character ed. Maybe whether we call it character ed, whether you call it whatever you want to call it, I was thinking, is there a connection between how you start to treat other people, how we look at some of these things that puts an added impact, an added relevance back, and can put some of that stuff back onto with social studies, and understanding that social studies might actually be more than just history, because I think what people think is, well, they're going to get American history. If they miss it in 5th grade, they're going to get it in 8th grade. They're going to get it in high school. So if they miss a little bit of it right now, I really got to make sure these kids can read, because that way, when they're getting the textbook in 8th grade that has American history in it, at least they'll be able to read it and understand it. So I think as we're looking at relevance, I think we may have to kind of try to see if we can't start to look for other things to put in. Not that we have to add or water down. I'm just thinking that's why I was looking at people aspect we could put in, because a lot of those things come into respect. How do we teach respect? Are we respecting other cultures? Are we respecting our own history? Are we respecting some of how we came and how other people came and understanding? So it's, I don't know how to put it in there, but as I was reading it, that's the piece that I felt like was missing.
I like, kind of looking at it because I'm facing that poster kind of with all of the headers, I was thinking of how much yesterday we talked about citizenship, and I think it's implied here, but it's not a direct.
It's not there.
We are laying a foundation for students to practice good character and citizenship. That's what we're, I think, gosh, we should say that, if that's really what, as consensus we believe, because it's not there.
It's our practice in most schools. We separated out we tried to separate out responsibility and behavior from learning goals. So a learning goal truly reflects if they mastered the learning goal. And responsibility and behavior are reflected through another set of what we were talking about. So it's a practice we do.
I know you ready. Okay. All right, I think we've had a lot of pre-discussion.
Yeah.
But that's fine. I just, did your distribution list and texted everybody the, posters from yesterday, the pictures and everything that Tony had. So sometime today, just check and make sure you're getting that, so I'm sure. I didn't get any error messages back. I did find out that Craig was out of the office, but that was it. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Good. And then you can use that same distribution list. That'll have the emails of everybody on here. So you can shoot your question. All righty. Let's begin. Open with you.
Oh, I can start.
You get to start.
Well, there'll be nothing left to be said after I'm done.
Well,
No, actually, I restricted myself to 5 points.
we'll just use one right now.
Okay, one right now, and it's the one that was just talked about, is that as I review this blue square, citizenship is really missing. I know that it varied within, because I teach these please and go over standards all the time, every year. It varied within principles of the Republic, but if I were to look as an outsider, let's say an alien who dropped in from another planet and look at this, I would not see that in Missouri we're teaching citizenship within social studies. And personally, I think that's a mistake. I would like to see it change.
This first go around now is just asking clarifying questions, trying to understand where we might go with that and so forth. So Kathy, you can pass it to it.
Oh, no.
I didn't think you would ask.
I'll never pass.
So she's supposed to ask me questions or comment?
About what you're just
Yeah.
clarify or make sure she understands.
Now I'm good.
All right, I'm good. Yeah.
What, I guess, you said like citizenship, are you thinking, we talked the other day about a citizenship test, some people gave that, are you thinking in that?
Yeah, so when I look at this blue square, I don't see anything that says that, in social studies in Missouri, we should be, helping young people understand what the rights and responsibilities of being a citizen of your community, of your state, and of your nation is.
That's.
Can you say that one more time?
As I look at this blue square, I do not see that in our social studies, Missouri social studies standards, that we say that we want students to understand their rights and responsibilities as a citizen of our community, our state, and our country.
We wanted you to get that.
Okay,
No, it said what?
Understand that
Their rights and responsibilities as citizens of their community, their state, and their country.
Just off topic.
I would say that would be, if we're wanting to, them to apply that, I think it would be hard to assess. With, because I'm thinking really the true assessment of that would be an increase in the number of people who show up at the polls to vote would be one indicator.
Well, that's one responsibility of citizens.
Right, that's one, but I'm thinking, I can't really determine
Giving to
if someone's a
charity,
responsible
right,
citizen
being,
by asking them a multiple choice question or.
Well, I think most states, with my understanding, most states, and we even try it in Missouri, is we start off with those personality, those character traits, and defining within our community what are the traits of a good citizen. And on a human relation, at the kindergarten level, what's a good citizen in our classroom? What's a good citizen in our community? And what are both in terms of rights and responsibilities? And so you can build from there all the way down to, and I think in the US, we tend to think primarily immediately of, well, my first responsibility is to vote. Some would argue there might be other ones too, like participate in public debate, participate on committees that deal with public issues or issues of public concern. Right to make your opinion known to your elected representatives, those sorts of things. And so,
sit on nonprofit.
possibly, absolutely,
Right. I mean,
serve your community. But so that as I look at that, I don't see citizenship represented here. The rights and responsibilities, teaching our young people about the rights and responsibilities of citizenship.
I think I guess I was kind of jumping ahead of some of this discussion just a little bit earlier, and I'm just questioning Kathy, but as I was looking at that, so I know I'm looking at some of the back to Alden, which was said citizenship, and I still absolutely, with what you just said, I'm trying to figure out, not that we're going to teach 2A tests, we're going to have to only have the test, but if we lay out citizenship agreement to look at, how do we determine what that looks like to make sure it's something that students have. Like, so if I say that's something we're going to say we want all students to know, understand, be able to do, the next question would be, how do we know when they have it? So, do you have an idea?
Yeah, so there's actually quite a few pieces out there. It usually breaks into, the common framework of content, skills, and attitudes. And you can assess those in a variety of different ways, whether it's through projects, through service work in the community, through even standard writing tests, or sort of written assessments. So there's a variety of things out there. If you look at the Center for Civic Education in Calabasas, California, they have standards that are written. That's something to look at. It's certainly built into the National Council for Social Studies standards in terms of civic life standards. So I think they're out there. And again, there's some of that in the Missouri standards. It's just not explicit when you look at that blue square. It's in there. It's just not laid out in the blue square so much.
in the details.
It is. It's in the details. It's kind of buried along with other stuff that would traditionally, I think, be listed with government. But here we have almost like I see two different government categories listed here in this blue square, in those citizenship category.
So in your thinking, Alden, would it be good, I have two questions. Would it be good to add a strand of citizenship? Is that what you're thinking would be?
It would be my preference, yeah.
And the second question is, if this is we're dealing with an assessment document. So if this is an assessment document, how do we measure that would be the question, that we have to come back to, is how would that be measured?
And again,
And you don't have to answer that, but just the
different
thoughts
places
on
are
it.
handling it in different ways. I mean, I think none of us feel that standardized test is the be-all and end-all of all assessment.
Right.
You know,
How do you
there was a
compare
time
that?
when we looked at portfolios, there were times when we looked at, essays, extended answer, and then of course there's always activities that we have schools do, from service, community service. And that's an interesting thing because we do a lot of that in the schools. It's just not in the standards. Whether it's community service or it's character ed, it's just not in our standards. Because to me, that means that educators recognize and communities recognize that it's important, regardless of whether it's in the standards or not.
So my first thought was like, at the kindergarten level, they, after, having there's not information, why could they not draw a picture of someone displaying good citizenship and then be able to tell what characteristics they were displaying or what they were doing? Or you could kick it up another notch, and from what I just pulled up, and my first thought of this citizenship was the law. And I think about older kids saying, which one of these people does not display good citizenship? Your mom drove 9 miles an hour to school this morning, you're so-and-so did that, so it could be multiple choice, it could be picture, it could be, give the kids an assignment within the school, something they can volunteer to do. So I think you have lots of options as far as assessment.
There used to be in Highlights magazine, Highlights used to have Doofus or whatever. You had the citizenship traits in there. I used to do kindergarten and first grade. And the kids couldn't wait to get to that, what's he up to today? And we're talking about rules and regulations, playground rules and all that stuff. And they couldn't wait to get to that page in the magazine because he's doing it wrong, he's doing it wrong. So there's an understanding level there. And you can measure it that way. I mean, you literally can have kids, and I think the Stanford does some of that. What is an appropriate action, what is inappropriate, and the kids have to choose. It's as simple as that when it comes down to it.
And then you could explain why,
And
tell
then,
what they would be doing differently, and you can always kick that up a notch. What would you do if you
And
were in that
exactly, that's
situation?
what some of the tests do.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, you can bring it up on any level, but I agree with you wholeheartedly. That was one of the things. There's, number one, what you said earlier, Kathy, there is no people concept, no people part in it. And I think Patrick said the same thing. And then also citizenship, and I think the reason it's so strong with me with the citizenship, I came in from another country. So there's a whole different perspective on my part. And I know I mentioned it several times, but what you take for granted, I had to learn. That's why, to me, and I shared with somebody yesterday, that we're talking about the right to vote. I haven't missed the voting thing yet in my local community. None of it. Once I was able to vote, that's what I'm doing. And in my social studies teachings, that's what I stress to my 5th graders, that's what I stress to my kindergartners and my 1st graders. Are your mom and dad going to vote? And 8 out of 10 would say, no, they're busy. But you can instill it in the kids. But I think I agree with putting another strain in there that talks about the citizenship and the duties and responsibilities.
I agree. I just made a note here, trying to think of wording that flowed with this, the same concepts of, includes knowledge of concepts of civic duties and behaviors. I think it's not just knowing what the duties are or what we should do, but then at some point reinforcing behaviors that demonstrate that they do understand the knowledge piece. I agree though, I like the idea that there needs to be a bigger emphasis on the civics piece.
I think my concern is probably a bigger, what's our definition
so I was gonna ask, what would be your definition
Yeah,
of citizenship?
Yeah, that's a tough one, right? In some sense, because, when we know we have rights as citizens, enumerated in the Bill of Rights, responsibilities of citizenship are somewhat different. And those are not as enumerated as clearly. And so usually the way it's handled is that a community like the state or a local community like Character Plus uses a system of where they go into a school and bring parents and educators together and go through a process of identifying what are the traits of a good citizen or a character that you think are important for your children, and you come to a consensus on what those traits are. Funny thing is, they usually come up with the same ones over and over again, right? There might be one here or there. So I think that is a challenge. There are lots of people. There are people who have written about it. There are existing standards, and there are some even codified. I think that is something that we have to be really closely looked at.
Yeah, so I would agree with that. I think it's very difficult because I've had, I've had kids and, this is an issue that has come up year after year after year. The difference between, you talk about a duty role, and for me, what they discuss in class is that it's a responsibility to vote. In my opinion, if you're an American citizen, it's your duty to vote. And so so that coming down the pike does not, how do you see, I guess my concern is how do you add citizenship without defining what it is?
I think you have to. I think you're exactly right. You have to. I even have a colleague from the university who calls it civic virtue. And he even takes to that kind of among your students. So I think that's something that we have to do.
For me, I really see citizenship and all of those things under versus as a thing under. That all of these things that we do in public education when we're working on social studies is really, for me, the goal of becoming a good citizen. We're laying that foundation. I think it would be interesting to play with that language in italics at the top. That citizenship could be an character and citizenship could be an overarching thing. Because when I talk about, I can talk about the documents that shaped our democracy and talk about citizenship and what that meant and how people stepped forward to say, okay, and they came from different perspectives and they didn't all agree. And you have documents that show their disagreement and how they came to consensus. I think economically, my spending and saving impacts the people around me. I would like to think that it's just me that it impacts, but in reality, it impacts everybody around me too. And I think that's the same, geography and the environment. What I choose to do impacts other people under all of these other ideas that are here. And so what do we feel like is important for kids growing up in public education to develop good citizenship under those things? So I worry a little bit about making it a strand because I wouldn't want it to just become a unit. Because it's bigger than that. I mean, it's more important than that, I think, than a unit we do or a character trait of the month. I've often thought, I'm not sure that gets us where we need to be with the conversation. So,
Check our box. Check.
yeah.
I'm done.
Yeah.
Citizenship.
So the question would be is whether we write it as a strand or moving forward, we look very carefully to make sure that it's included within all of the glees as we go through.
You could actually put it in the header of the social studies, included in there.
Solid foundation.
Yeah, solid foundation, citizenship, responsibility of citizens. I mean, you work on our wordsmith and we can actually put that in as the overview on that. And I agree with you, if you make it a strand, it's, as a teacher with the time pressure and stuff, and we covered that, yeah. And but with the understanding that this impacts everything. And again, how do we make it relevant to students? If it's just, well, in October, we're gonna talk about citizenship, and then it's done. That's our problem with social studies right now. It is a neglected subject.
Do you guys think that, I mean, because when I was in school, very little was taught about our founding, our constitution, our bill of rights. Do you think that if that is the focus, teaching what our country was founded on, our bill of rights, our constitution? I mean, as I've become an adult and I've studied art history, and I've studied our founding documents, I find that I have understood what it means to be a citizen. But if these kids if our kids don't have those foundational points to pin things to, then they don't have any information to help them understand what it means to be a citizen of this country or of their community, wherever they reside. So I was just wondering, is it maybe having more of our founding being the emphasis? Because as I studied it, that becomes very loud to me, what my responsibility as a citizen is, rather than somebody, trying to say, okay, this character over here is what it means to be a good, but if you study these men and women who actually founded our nation, you can't help but see those citizenship characters within them.
Yeah, I think that's on Missouri. In fact, I think you're exactly right. Let's see, what was it? I agree, and.
Yes.
Yes, and.
I agree and works.
Yes, I think that's what they've done in the principles of what's now called the principles of the republic is they try to answer your question of, okay, we want to teach citizenship. We believe it's important for our young people to be taught citizenship. Where do we start? And they start with, as it says, the principles expressed in the document shaping constitutional democracy in the United States. So going back to those founding principles, and so the very first couple of years is kind of laying that groundwork to say, okay, what does it mean to be a citizen in the United States? Well, let's look at our Constitution. What does the Constitution say? And then what are the character traits that you need to have to fulfill those rights and responsibilities in the constitutional documents? And then as it goes up in age group and ability to abstract, what does that look like more and more in the world outside of our interpersonal relations, but as we move out in our society. And then that's when it really gets kind of sticky, right? Because then, like we all do as adults, we're constantly weighing all the complexity of interacting as citizens within a free society.
If I go back to like how what Kathy was saying about making it more overarching, like what you just said is exactly how it would fit. Is that you would teach the founding of the country, but you're also doing it with the idea that citizenship is in mind. It's a part that would be woven into all the different parts of the teaching in there. So it's not, so it's a piece of everything you do and not something separate. So you wouldn't say, okay, this month we're going to teach the founding of the country, and this month we're going to teach citizenship. But you may be constantly looking at how these things are, because some people can look at those things and not pull out those explicit connections to citizenship, or some people will, or they may not ever take that, or it just may not quite get in there. You can go with a very surface level view of certain things and never quite get that deep into it. So I think, as we're looking at making sure I think that idea of even being an overarching theme through all those things actually makes it easier to do what you just said, because that would be a part of learning. You would be taking it from this bigger thing to being able to apply it to some of those behaviors of individuals. I really like that.
Could I offer consensus?
Oh, may I add one more point?
Sure, we can continue discussing. I was just gonna say, thumbs up if you want to see more about citizenship included. Thumbs down if you see that as is. Okay.
I'm sorry,
What was the
More
next?
citizenship included,
More
or do
citizenship
you think it's
included.
okay the way it is?
Okay, the way it is. One or the other. Okay. Okay, so here's what I'm gonna suggest that we do. Is take a break. We've been at it quite a while here. And during that break, jot down your ideas of how you think it might best be included. Do a little wordsmithing, that type of thing. I'm gonna go on and put a yellow post-it up that says that the group has a consensus that we want citizen, additional references to citizenship instruction or whatever. How would you like to say that?
More citizenship, how about what we learned? More citizenship included or emphasized in the standards.
Okay. So
That
I'm
kind of
gonna
general
put that up,
statement.
and then let's start thinking about how we want to see that happen, what wording we want to use, et cetera. Definition possibly, as Tony suggested, so take a break, and, let's come back at 25 after, that'll give you time to do a little work and meet your needs.
Are we gonna, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be a statewide assessment, there's assessment for K-5 that's going to include social studies, right?
As of right now.
So it probably still will just be against the herbs, we probably should, it says it's not gonna go further than what the innate task. So it may still just be math, reading math, language arts, math, and maybe science in fifth grade stuff.
Yep.
I think that eventually, I mean, social studies was the last one on the list, but my understanding was if it was to come, but we keep getting backlogged with then picking a different curriculum and starting managing.
But I'm just thinking, if we're talking about, like, a lot of questions came back to assessment, and it was a standardized, we talked about standard assessment, we may be looking at something that's not going to have a standardized assessment, so in some ways,
There is a need.
for social studies.
Yeah, there is.
Okay, but it's,
And even one for citizenship in particular.
But two things are prevented. Time.
Absolutely, it's probably
That's the thing, because I know a lady that administers tonight in our area, and she said that's one of the reasons they don't have social studies and sometimes not the science.
Yeah.
Because of time and money.
Yes, yeah, the social studies one isn't given every year. It's given like every 4 years or something like that. Like,
Okay.
yes, show me.
So I go down this one, and I go to Google Slides. Everything like recent documents, I was open.
I know, I was saying,
It looks so, it looks like my concept.
I mean, listen to it.
What's the day I'm
I'm gonna tell her that she can actually use the full version of
Which is amazing, and it seems like
Just
so
the versus
there's no
slides.
clarity to
Yeah.
presentation, we're back in slides. I just went to Google Sort, so now we're gonna go right into the 5 seconds. And then I open my presentations and go at it and it's got articles, everything's digital. I know.
Absolutely. Yeah, she just got it from one, and she hates the slides. And her students hate it. Yeah.
This is Chrome, I looked at the HP version on Amazon. Well, I got 14-inch because I got on Amazon, and then I did the 3 for me on the live. I don't know what I did. Aaron, when you sent me.
Oh, yeah, they're very reasonable.
250, I probably
Yeah.
550, but the
Yeah, they're very reasonable.
yeah, and the cloud thing was great. I don't know how much polls, like I said, I just learned about it last night, but this is,
Just
this
make
makes
sure,
me like.
just make sure you're, just make sure what pictures you put on the cloud.
Okay, only because she just got listed in her on there, so I
It
just.
must be walking time.
It's actually.
Yesterday I went upstream.
Just to be honest.
Well, you know, sometimes it's a change of directions.
Yeah, that's true, so they don't wear out the carpet the same way.
Maybe it's alternate days, so you don't get to lean to one side.
I thought, well, why not? I'll just go the other way. Hey, there's 100-calorie snacks if anybody wants them.
If you got 10 of them, I could eat it.
I've got other snacks in here.
But that gets my calorie.
So I'm a big dork and I just emailed you guys, I'll email Pam sent us, this is its citizenship standards and how these guys look at our life as far as unsatisfactory and prove us to be satisfactory. And then there's actually a whole Education Commission of the State on Civic Education, which, have you seen that? Holy cow.
Yeah, there's
I
tons
haven't-
of stuff out there.
Crazy.
Yeah, there's
Pam?
tons of stuff out there.
I have
Well, no,
not,
they
I
take
have not
all-
received that
They have
email
all the
from you
states in
yet,
one place,
just so you
and
know.
everything's on a chart.
Mine
Yeah.
hasn't come through.
Double check your,
What you're missing or not.
email.
And they said Tennessee is the
Okay.
first to do, project-based assessment in the nation.
Because I had it yesterday,
I don't feel as bad thinking that Missouri's the only one left.
No,
I think this
Oh,
is
no, not
something
at
we
all.
need to get out on.
we are not at all.
There was
I wanna make
there
sure
was
it's
a
right
wave
on my
of
district.
citizenship ads that we really pushed, and then it got kind of crushed.
And this and this, that.
Do me a favor. Somebody hold that for a second until I go get another piece of steak, because foolishly, I only came over here with one piece of steak.
No child left behind is the goal.
Thank you.
It looks like,
I was Oklahoma during that time. so-
NCLB pretty much killed it.
so it looks like maybe doesn't necessarily be a social studies one, but they have a test for each of the areas.
Yes.
So there's a civics test, a geography
Right.
test,
Right, and they don't do it every year,
world history,
They don't do
economics.
and they vary. One of the interesting things,
I'm gonna
Tanya,
get my 100 calories.
Yes.
one of the interesting things is I work with teachers in a variety of different countries, and we did a research project saying, asking students, what does it mean to be a good citizen in different countries?
Yeah.
And then gave them, it was multiple choice. So it was Poland, Ukraine, South Africa, and the US, several states in the US. And pretty much everyone agreed, but there were some areas where people disagreed. Yeah, even within different communities in the US, they would disagree. The one that stands out the most to me was in South Africa, everyone else said that painting graffiti was not what a citizen did, except in South Africa. In South Africa,
I saw that
a
before.
good citizen would actually paint graffiti, protest graffiti. But all the other countries we surveyed said a good citizen wouldn't do that. So your point is very right on. I mean, communities sort of define, and nations define what citizenship means. Absolutely.
But I think you point out, I mean, there are some just foundational
Absolutely.
things
That we could all probably agree on. And then it becomes hazy, doesn't it, a little bit? And you have to make through this.
My concern just as a parent of kids, I mean, and I, hear what Ralph was saying about how much time they give into social studies and science, and my kids don't get that.
Right.
I mean, my
Absolutely.
fourth grader does not receive, he doesn't receive history or
So the way we combat
science
that
on
is,
any given day, on any
teachers are
given
That's right.
specialized.
depth.
Some
See,
elements
And
of the
it's,
class.
it's horrible
It's
because
true.
we're working at home to teach him things that, when he's gone for 7 hours a day already,
Yeah.
and the push is everything is math, math and language arts, or whatever it's called.
Right.
But that is, and, my concern is with science and history, it's, wait a second, if we don't
Those
have,
kids logging on, oh my goodness.
if these kids don't we were doing
I know.
science experiments and these guys, even my older kids, my 7th and 8th grader, don't do any kind of science experiments. I mean, it's just, and I realize some of it could be the local district, but I also hear a lot from the teachers, we just don't have time to teach it. We don't have time, and it's not a priority because it's not something that's tested, and so it's not a priority for our classrooms.
And it's really defines our time.
We took science out of, we put science into the rotation of specials. So K-5 gets once a week, spends an hour in
Yeah,
science lab.
It's a special.
Yeah.
And it's, kids love it, and we guarantee they get hands-on science. Now, science also has to be incorporated into the regular day, 30 to 45 minutes, depending on the day. So 2 or 3 times a week, probably. But they always, every week, they get science into it's a special.
In
So
addition.
Yeah,
In addition.
yeah, so it's like music, art, PE, I'm not sure, it's curriculum, computer and library departments, and then science.
When NCBF,
Do you have art?
when NCO, yes.
And art.
Music, art, PE, computer, library, and science.
It became a real discussion point when No Child Left Behind came out, and we started seeing the decline of social studies education. So nationally, the National Council for Social Studies meeting, there'd be these huge debates over, do we push to make social studies a tested subject, their NCLB or not? Because of that, you know, if it's tested, it's fine. If it's not, it gets relegated. It's like, and, you know, and honestly, there were convincing arguments on both sides, because from a practical point, I was like, let's test it, because then at least it'll get taught. But then I remember this one gentleman stood up, he said, but you know, would you rather have teachers just teaching it to the test and not really caring about it?
That's what's happening all around.
Or would you rather have it be a specials like art, where you have teachers who really love it and can transmit that love for social studies back to the students because they fought for it?
And the quality of the assessment is such that it merits teaching.
Yeah.
And
And so it's a tough issue. I mean,
But
there's
here's
that
the thing.
practical versus, you know, what's right.
Where did the push for assessment come from? I mean, this is one of my little soapboxes. When in 1983 still sticks out in my mind, Nation at Risk.
Yeah.
Okay, when you look at that, the push for assessment came to assess what? Are we assessing student knowledge? Are we assessing teacher effectiveness? Are we teaching the process? Or are we assessing the process? It's never been clarified. The only thing that we've used assessment for, in my opinion, is to say how bad teachers are.
Right, the teacher was.
You know, and that's huge. But until we got into all this assessment, pushing assessments, things were tough and things were learned. Now it's pick and choose. This is going to be tested. I'm going to have to teach that.
My second grader came home, some new class, he came home, he was like, Daddy, I'm so, he knows I was a social studies teacher, he understands my second grade, he was like, we are starting social studies and science, and I'm so excited. I'm looking at my watch, it's September.
Yeah.
And the other thing is second grade, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Second grade.
He was so excited, because we're all about the government.
Mhm. But what happened to kindergarten and first grade?
You know, here's, I think it was taught, but that intentional connection as a child was perhaps.
Well, when you don't have it regularly, you can't expect a kindergartner, first, second, even fourth, third, or fourth grader to understand it because they
It
don't
doesn't
clearly,
transfer.
hey, mom,
If you make it low priority, they do
happy
too.
birthday yesterday.
You have to identify your things.
I'll tell.
And if you don't,
It's
it's a first one.
Yes.
If it's brutally honest, there we go.
Shoot, okay. So what is the? Can I ask you about the last thing? If somebody has an. But
In the
it's
standards or just as a should be the right.
so.
Is that true? Is that true? You take.
Well,
Or
we're
not.
not just saying that's right now.
Absolutely.
It is similar. I mean, there's, I think there, in terms of organization possibilities for curriculums for teachers, it is.
What are we?
This is very friendly. To me, this is very.
She's our facilitator.
But if you're looking at overall, I think the details is where teachers find this.
What I'm saying about this is the incorporation of people, families,
Yes.
students, the way it's worded, not necessarily content. The way, like you said, principals, people express, oh, I can relate to people, I can relate to document, how am I gonna get these principles wrapped around my finger? So that
The
was.
national anthem is coming in every single one. And I guess if we have to change to mimic somebody, they do pretty good, but I think it's their system of teaching.
Yeah, no, you're right.
It's the value that's put on education, it's not the standard.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was.
We tend to do at elementary, most teachers do a unit of social studies and then a unit of science. And then they rotate back and forth in order to have more than 20 minutes to dig deeper in. But that's still.
We used to do fun Fridays in kindergarten and first grade. And basically, fun Fridays was either social studies or science project.
Okay, I'm still, going to say it all, so that you teach the child as a whole, right? And I think that's the only way you're going to relate to them is very
you
was
recall
their,
all those
their
things we
goal
said
is
yesterday,
they were
all
gonna
the positive
protect
things
the
for you
teacher who comes back
to go out and have from the classroom or whatever.
not, and then they kind of look at the standards, the old standards that they have.
Those things don't just
So one way
happen.
that
I think
is,
it's not, it's
you know,
not.
these
so
are very
much
disciplined.
It's
And
it's
to
the
me,
money.
are we comfortable with that? Oh, yeah, I could argue both sides, honestly. I could argue both sides, it's just a matter of what do we think best for kids. I believe we're gonna be disciplined. You have to change the standards to do that. It helps. You don't have to. It helps. That's why the National Council is done.
That's why I said when I first started teaching, that's why we do objectives, set very close, do lesson plans. And now it's scripted, and if you're not on the same script on the same day, it's the same hour. And the principal walks through.
I haven't released a map yet. I don't think since my second year teaching.
Yeah, we used to do the mini courses.
I was teaching five.
Yes, sir.
So that kind of for me to help me. But other than that.
I was just thinking, Rob,
Last year before that,
Math, we don't
the
have.
year before that, there was one principal, but this last year seemed like there was a lot of assistant.
it was more, what happened was,
So
the
that's
year
great.
before
The
last,
reading my system.
the elementary schools,
Here's Basil.
we had several that were, the attendance fluctuating, the way that the district has it set up, it's one, they go off 3-year averages. So, we take those 3 years, and then the projections are actually tested. And they put together 3 averages, the way we're going back up this year, at 550, or above, if this is if they don't this year. So originally, we did 450, 550, and told them who essentially did everything exactly the same. The only difference was that once we started the evaluation, and they technically can't write out schools suspicious. So, I mean, the only two, and then the biggest difference is that in terms of state contract, you still, the job, most time what happens is, they'll do the suspension, they'll do the discipline, and then principal signs off on the contract. They essentially do the exact same job, and then they say, keep the contract, plus the so you don't work at all, my contract is 240 days, so I have to work.
And the kids,
They, there's also 260. We have a 260. Yeah, we have a 260. Actually, this is what we do, because when they do 260, they have just vacation days. I'm sorry, we're actually 230. Ours is 230, no vacation days. And so actually, when they figured it all out, we ended up with actually one more day of work in the 260s because they vacation. So, we just had this meeting, we just had this brought up in our last principals meeting, because actually, some of the elementary school principals are on contract, the middle school, high school principals are on 260, and then they actually work 229 because of the weight special.
She
So,
is, yeah.
So,
She's in a couple of the.
what they did, the year in there, if you were working for those 3 years, they now have got what was happening the year before last was they said we're going to have every building has 2 administrators. So no matter the size of the
Guys,
hiring
time is 9.
because they have 2 administrators. So I mean, that's a huge difference. So they hire like 5 or 6 or 4, that's just all. It's like elementary schools.
Once I okay.
I just, 5 pages. You can't see it. Because you just walk out, you get all the discipline, you walk down, and there's something that, here you go, whatever divisions, pieces, and how to say, I tell them the instructional direction we need to. We bog down the day to day.
Your charge, if you chose to accept it, was to do a little wordsmithing or where you where you might like to see that included, how you might like to see that included. Yellow sticky is up there, and because my handwriting is so poor, I went on and had Jana write it up so that we could all read what we got. and you can write them on yellow sticky notes. You can share them with the group, and we can try to word craft together. It's kind of your pleasure.
Before we do that, Karen, I
You
just
did have a
want to
point you wanted to make.
yeah, I just want to make one other point. And I hear everyone, and I agree with everyone again, on the idea that when we look at social studies, it is all about producing effective citizens for our country. My concern is if it's not a delineated strand, if we have strands that are delineated and it's not one of them, then it's one of those things that's infused and lost. If it becomes just a covering statement. So, and I could probably argue either side, but for me, citizenship and understanding citizenship is so important that it would, I would be most happy to see us both. To understand that in 40 or is it 48 of our 50 states, the reason we have public education, we fund public education in our state constitutions is to produce effective citizens. And so in that way, it is a covering principle of all public education. And so it probably should be in social studies, but that if we just leave it as a covering statement and not have it as a strand, that it will be so infused that it will disappear in a sense, that it won't have them. So that's my soapbox.
I agree with you, I think it could go either way, but when I look at the 7 up there, I think it fits in with just as equal of importance as those topics, if not more. And I don't want lost in the mix either.
Could you see it as that, and then as we're actually writing, if you make a copy, if you just make a concerted effort to put it into the actual standards under each of the 7? You know what I'm saying? So it's that, but then as we're actually writing.
I would do both, yeah. I mean, if I had my brothers, I would do both. That we understand geography. For instance, if we were to keep this strand kind of basis, we understand geography and human relations and its relevances as human relations as citizens.
Right.
Right. So I would do that, but my fear would be that if it also wasn't its own strand, then we think people are teaching it, but we don't really know what it is. It's going to be so diffuse that it becomes indistinguishable.
So it might be kind of like, I guess, for us, it's just what maybe it's just what we do. We teach scientific method as its own unit and discuss the components and what is the scientific method. But then whenever they get into different units in science, the scientific method is a part of each of the different units. So you can apply units. You may apply an experiment of electricity using the scientific method processes, but you first teach some of the content of the scientific method.
Right.
And then apply it.
Can I ask a question that it's not totally related to this, but it is, I'm just thinking back to what you said earlier about you like how this start kind of at the top of what you want a citizen to, or, a graduate to do with respect to social studies and work its way down. Is anyone else here, just a thought when we were talking about what do we do with this, the thought goes through my mind, is this futile if we don't know what the 612 is working on? You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
if their
And I think
strands fit
before you were
different.
here, they came in and asked to meet with us today. I don't think you were here, so they've actually come in and asked to meet with us. First off, we said, well, we haven't had a chance to even talk yet, so maybe in the afternoon we can meet. So they're supposed to come back down and pose a time to meet, to talk with them. So exactly to your very point. So whether that's going to happen or not, I don't know, but they're supposed to come back down to us and ask to meet to compare kind of where we are in the process.
Are we at the point where we want to start drafting specific language? I'm thinking if we have a bigger group when we meet next time, that when we get to that specific, do we want to kind of go through all of them and kind of look at what do we think is important to continue to be a part of our curriculum standards? What do we think we might leave out? What do we want to add? And then come back and work on the language on another work day when we have kind of a foundation for here are the things that we've decided are most important. Because then we might be able to even divide into smaller groups and draft the language and come back and bring that to the bigger group. Because wordsmithing is a lengthy process, and I'm worried that we'll wordsmith something and something on down the road will change that.
I agree.
Kind of like the example that you gave.
I concur with you. I would be more interested myself in, you know, I had my chance to say what I saw was missing. I'd like to hear what you said and kind of go all the way around. And also to allow us that opportunity, so the next time we convene, then hopefully we have more people here before we actually start drafting any kind of language.
I like that it started with some of just the brainstorming, so we get,
Yeah.
once I get caught up in just thinking of how we're gonna be real specific, I feel like that starts to give me a little bit of tunnel vision, but just like the brainstorming process of hearing where we're kind of at, just a more open dialogue and thoughts.
Aaron, what do you think?
I agree. I think that we should,
Just continue on.
yeah, continue.
Right.
I don't think we should do any because of, I mean, you know my stance,
That we still need to make sure that we haven't touched on with anything. Okay, so let's go on then. Kathy and Kathy.
And so are we gonna continue to go around until we go through all of our questions, or do we each get one question?
No,
I'm
no.
gonna be very choosy
No, no.
about which one to take.
We will continue.
I just took the first one on my
He
list.
has five, so.
I got 5. We're gonna be here all
Some of
day.
yours may be picked up by somebody else having the same one.
Yeah,
We can have some crossover, so you might check some off as you go, so.
Well, one of the things that I've struggled with both teaching from this curriculum is that the tools become kind of this separate, the tools of inquiry become a separate thing over here. And for me, they're kind of like citizenship. How do we in whatever curriculum we recommend say that these tools of inquiry, and I think there's some, since this document was created and digital tools kind of come into that picture, I think it's important to articulate that at some point. But how do we, and how we articulate it, infuse that these tools of inquiry, when we are using statistics and maps and source documents and artifacts, that they are a part of all of the study that we do. They're not this one-shot unit.
that was my concern.
You were a ditto on that.
Exactly, thank you.
Now, I don't see how you can put that. I mean, I see how you can leave it like that, I guess. You know, with the age we are now, I think that should also be connected throughout. And how, like geography, they should be able to use that. I mean, and know what it is and, you know, difference of what the compass rose is and what it means and.
Yeah, I'd say it's probably the same. I think my guess is that when this was written, it's hard for me to say so there, but they had a very similar discussion to what we just had about citizenship. And there was a concern about if it doesn't have its own, we leave it out. And just that somewhere in there, this was the other way to start to look at putting emphasis on skills versus just content knowledge. Was that if you make it explicit you want them to use tools, it gets away from just what is a compass rose to how do you use a compass rose, which might be two separate things. So I think if you're gonna take it, I think that the idea of using things also throughout, but then you have to be explicit in the standards and make sure that as you're writing the standards gonna meet each of the other strands as you get more specific, that we make a concerted effort to remember to put some of those pieces in there so that's diffused throughout, maybe not some separate thing.
Just one thing I wanted to tell you, and I looked back in the office for some, I reread it last night, and I thought, but I couldn't find it today, so I must bring it. But when these were initially written, there were, to be only 74, 79
75, it's still in the law,
That's what I thought.
75
I thought 75, so when we add things, we have to remember that may cause us to take something away, because all of the standards for all the subject areas can only total 75, so I think if you look.
Right, 75 strands.
Standards.
75 academic
Performance standards.
Yes.
But what we're looking at over here, those are called standards in that blue document. We may call them strands, but that's what we call them. That's what the So we just have to be a little bit careful of how it may be that we can include, include two things together, or, I don't know what we'll decide to do, but just kind of keep that in mind, is that we don't have an open-ended, we can add. Okay. Now, somebody else may take one away, and then we would have the opportunity to jump in and say, well, we want to add one. But since we don't know what the other groups are doing, Patrick, do you just?
Sounds good, yeah.
Great. And
I'm gonna flip something here. If you turn your blue chart over, roll forward, and find out citizenship. So, I mean, that's, what it technically is telling by that map is that all of this should be woven in any subject area. So, what I see there is we have the standards on one side, but we're not doing what's on the other side. Does that make sense?
So it's in there, and if we're not, if this is being, if we're changing this, then do we add it here, as a process of that? Good question.
So,
thoughts on that, Rob's statement?
Well, for me, I think it would be helpful to know as the whole standards committee work group, because those process standards are for every content. At some point, I think we need to know what other groups are doing with those process standards. Are they just working within their content standards, or is it information need?
I can check that. I will text Cynthia and ask her. But my thinking is, if our curricular area, if it's impacted by this, then probably we can make a recommendation for the goals. But let me check, because I really don't know that. So that's just a conjecture that for that, so I will text her and let her know. Oh, Tony.
At this point, I really have not had enough finding out, right? I really have not had enough time to actually really dive into. I was trying to just jot some things down very quickly. I have not had enough time to really contemplate the standards. So I can't offer anything at this point.
Then my turn. So I have a clarifying question. Are you saying that you like that there's that in the way this social studies is written, that there is this, I guess we'll call it strand that's specifically tools of social science inquiry? So you like having that as a separate strand?
I think it's an important strand. I think when it rolls out, because when it rolls out like this and the bleeds are in this whole separate place, if I'm a first grade teacher and I'm talking about the contributions of George Washington and Abraham Lincoln, I want teachers to know that we should be using those tools of inquiry to meet that bleed, even though it looks like in what they're used to seeing in terms of formats, this unit at the back of social studies. Really, those are the tools that you're using for all these other things. And so just to be mindful of how do we help, it's great that we have textbook publishers that have all these great cartoony books about George Washington and Lincoln, but we have really great photographs of Lincoln. And the glee isn't about facts and information about Lincoln, it's about what is the contribution. They're both presidents. We have a lot of presidents. What made this one unique? And I think first graders can understand that a contribution means something that I did differently than other presidents did. I wasn't just a leader of the army that was over here telling people what to do miles away. I was with people. And to me, I really do think a first grader can understand that through through exploring paintings, through exploring photographs when they're available, depending upon the time period. But I don't think that's always clear. That we want those tools to be used, they're part of inquiry.
Yeah, and that's where I am too. Yeah, I've always thought it was great, and this, from my review of other state standards as well, this is something that's pretty common, is that there is a strand that is focused on social science inquiry, and what are those tools, and again, do it developmentally, what's appropriate for a kindergarten child, what tools to use versus a first grader. But I also worry that, at least in my anecdotal work with some teachers, that they don't reach those. That those things are they don't understand that when you're teaching the contributions, that you should be using the social science inquiries. And so I think I heard Patrick talking about, shouldn't they be written in as part of the content standard as well, and not separate? Or do we have to have them both? Like I was just arguing for citizenship. Do they have to be both? And I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I mean, because what I want, I know what I want. The ideal world is what I ask my student teachers to do, which is you take a content standard and you look at, for first grade, for instance, and you find out what are the inquiry standards in first grade, and which of those inquiry standards help you teach that content. Right? Now, is it better to have them separated out, or can we write them together? And I think separated out, it gives the teacher more freedom of construction.
Right.
And to use their own imagination, but they also have to be, coached and supported to do that. And it's a lot easier to do the other. Is it just, okay, I'll just do the content one and forget about the book. And that's what I see happening.
Good point. Very good point.
I think you can still put them in there and give them freedom. You know what I mean? Because I think, and like you said, it's the same thing with the civics. If they're just down here on the bottom, they get pushed to the side. But then again, I like to thematic, I like to integrate and not try to restrict anyone on how to teach or what to teach, but as a suggestion, first grade, it says globes and maps, identified with one, but that's not be able to fit somewhere else.
Yeah.
Just like we're gonna have to try to fit the civic education somewhere else.
And the one thing I would also add to what I like what Kathy said was that we could probably upgrade these to meet more current time. And even if we were to leave it just the way it is, and our recommendation is yes, they should stay as its own strand. We believe the social science inquiry should be its own strand. We could probably look and say, the world's moved on a little bit, and there are probably some things that fit better with the technology of the day and age and the skills like we were looking at yesterday in terms of critical thinking and those sorts of things that we might want to upgrade these a little bit more.
Do we use globes or do we use Google Maps?
Right. Right.
I mean,
And is there a value in one over the other? Or we just include it as another one,
I'm sure.
right? To not say you can't use globes, because there are some kids, the tactile version of a globe is really incredibly important. But could we also include, Google Maps or online mapping tools or GPS?
Yeah.
Which I know a lot of schools are doing, even in primary grades.
Could I interrupt just a moment? I texted Malia to see if we could work on the goals, and she said that everything on this blue face map is statutory.
That's what I thought it was.
So I'm not really sure we can make changes on this at this point. She was going to go check and see if that was an option for us, which was one of the reasons we were starting with the blues, but I didn't realize that we weren't even supposed to review the standards, so that's my fault for being not knowledgeable on that, but now we know. So we can continue with this if we want to, but she'll get back with me as soon as she's checked to see if there's any way that can be done.
I would suggest that what we're doing is really valuable.
Me too.
Because it's giving us a framework for how we can, because those are the strand titles.
Right.
So it's giving us really a thought of how we process through.
I think we can make a list of, at the very least, list of these concerns we have in the standards to make sure that when we start looking at the B's, that they're well embedded.
I agree.
Right.
So I think we can continue that way if that sounds, even if we can, there may be a way we can do the standards, but if we can, then this way we're making sure we know what we want to embed. So,
Yes. She's saying she doesn't think we're able to, but the point was standards.
yeah, we're looking at, actually, the point is the B's, which are under the standards. She's saying that this was statutory, and she's going to check on it and see where we are.
Her thinking is House Bill 69 does not negate the statutory requirements. 49 doesn't negate the statutory requirements of that.
It's how they're
Right.
rolled out into grade level and course level
Right, I
expectations.
understand, I mean, the bill says we can't add what's already statutory, which is 75 total standards.
That's what I was mentioning.
The bill talks about us developing the standards though for the different subject areas.
That's why she's checking. Because she's now, since we went to gold, probably if I'd asked her on standards, she wouldn't have thought so much about it, but when we went to gold, she was thinking, well, I think this is statutory, I'm not sure that this House bill can override. Let's go. That doesn't prevent us from continuing to.
Yeah, because I think you're right, and it helps us then think, even if we can't touch this, because of
How do we
statutory
make sure
limitations,
it's,
how can we make
How
sure
do we
they're in the
articulate
beliefs?
them?
Yeah, absolutely, I think it's really worthwhile.
It's very worthwhile.
okay, do I hear a consensus on the inquiry? I'm gonna need somebody to paraphrase that for me.
On what Kathy has said, yeah.
To me, it's more of a formatting issue, is that how do we connect for teachers that these strands are not separate? That they interact and connect with one another and were designed to be used with one another. So as I look at history, at any grade level, I am looking at it through the eyes of bringing in the geography perspective, bringing in the tools of inquiry, or I don't know, or is it not that way? Like how do we, because I think all separated, it's pretty overwhelming to figure out how to do this in a year, depending on, how we look at things. So how
What did I say? An emphasis on the integration of the strands.
interdisciplinary, maybe that's the word.
Yeah.
Social studies is interdisciplinary, in the disciplines of social studies.
I just need to mention, I would say next generation science, like social studies, but I know next generation science, what they did was they actually created, they had the standards and they created like a crosswalk underneath where they had crosswalk ideas for how you could integrate language arts standards and math standards in with the science, because I know my guess is they're looking at the same issue we are, where, those are the two subjects that sometimes get pushed to the side just a little bit, so there are ideas for how you can incorporate those using some of the reading and math standards. I mean, without knowing the reading and math standards, that can be very difficult. It's not a small task, even if you did know them, but I know that they put into it a crosswalk for how you start to, for ideas for how these things would start to fit together.
So Kathy, I heard you actually say something very different here in this summary statement than what you started off with. So from what I heard, you started off with talking about the inquiry standard and the need for it to be included in, that it was valuable, that it needed to be upgraded, and that it should be used when teaching the content standards. Is that right? And then here at the end, I just heard you say, well, all of these should be taught interdisciplinary.
And the strands, I think, are interdisciplinary. They're not any of them standalone. But I think probably how it's laid out here, I think this is more important how it's laid out here for teachers, that happens, that process happens. That, to me, the tools of inquiry are more process than the content standards.
Right. Yeah, that's something key.
That's kind of where it's a little bit confusing.
And that you would keep it, but maybe upgrade it.
I think it does need to be upgraded.
So is there consensus on that? What is that?
Here's what I wrote down from what you said, and maybe from real clear. Evidence of the interdisciplinary nature of social studies should be obvious and modernized. Or updated, could be used. Is that captured yet? Safety. Evidence of the interdisciplinary nature of social studies should be obvious, I can put obvious within the belief, and updated or modernized or current, demonstrating current reality.
Updated, modernized, or just explicit?
So you're not, like, a while ago you were talking about, adding some of the technology improvements to these things.
I guess I'm saying that is a really important strand to me. I wouldn't want that one to go away.
The
How's
inquiry,
that?
the inquiry, so you value the inquiry standard and think that it should be,
I think
kept
that
current.
I think it should be kept current, yes.
Okay, I'm gonna redo that. Inquiry standard. Should be current.
See, when this was articulated, we didn't have the ability to collaborate digitally around documents. We could do hard copy, but we didn't have that, and I think that's gonna be important that we help students and support students in that process.
So the inquiry standard should be kept current. And then you also said something earlier, and I don't care if we add it, but you had mentioned something about, making sure that it was obvious throughout the lead.
I just think that's something to keep, to
that
keep
it
that
should
when
be
we get to
integrated.
this stuff.
Not
It's
right
just a
now.
comment, it wasn't a.
Well, that's, yeah, that's what I'm worried.
Keep in mind for later date when we
Yeah.
actually start the process.
All right, we are ready for our.
I'm gonna pass it this time.
I'll take her time.
What?
Folks are time.
Well, you took my first one. Go on as many
The
as
honorable,
possible.
the honorable lady, Laura has yielded her time.
Yes, sir.
And Patrick.
I guess one of it, this is more of just a concern, I don't know if it's a concern or what it is, but I think there's, as we look at the modernizing and stuff, this maybe it's good to know and make sure it's not just particular to the school district I'm currently part of, but I feel like in elementary school, our students are not exposed at all, or very little exposure is going to any sort of world history. We're starting to look at anything bigger than just, understanding that America is a part of a larger world, and that we also have to understand, especially as we talked about before, that there's a bit of a flattening in our students as they get older. There's some of that, I know we as a district don't start even looking at world history until 6th grade.
Yeah.
And then they come in and it's ancient China. And they are not, and all of a sudden a lot of the kids are going over their heads because all of a sudden they're in ancient China and they're not even, and they haven't even talked about China. Really we've learned about continents, but haven't gotten too far into some of the actual even countries, so they might not even really sure where China is. So I don't know exactly how it looks, I'm just more broad or just some of those pieces, but I do think we've got to start to think about not just American citizens and the support that is, but also our role as worldwide citizens and kind of that we are a larger part. And even if you look at, we joked a little bit about our U.S. history. Yesterday, at 5th grade, we would cover it from people coming across the land bridge in Alaska through Civil War. And that's, but so it's thousands of years of history, but even just realizing that American history didn't start in 1776 or 1492 even.
Greg, your thoughts, questions?
I agree.
I mentioned it yesterday, I think before you can truly understand American history, you have to have not far east, but European history. That's the backbone of why we have what we have in this country. And, even brings down to, I'm in 5th grade to do American history. Why not have especially the European history that of the three monarchies, France, Spain, and England. Because those were the three monarchies that sent over all the explorers that became dominant in this part of the world. I think when you start looking at some of that and somehow integrate that into social studies in the elementary, so when you get into 5th grade and in 6th grade, it makes more sense. I subbed in an 8th grade, no, it was a freshman class of American history, and they were studying the land bridge. You know, that's 8th grade. So are we rehashing it at that point? Do we need to go back to that? So it just, maybe it's my own bias I'm gonna bring in here, the fact that in order to understand the history of this country, you've gotta have some background knowledge of what Europe, what instrumental part of Europe played in forming this, you know. A lot of people, they look at the Constitution and Bill of Rights and go, yeah, that's just ours, that's it. There's more to it. Why was it written? What the underlying current is, why is it there? Why was slavery so bad when technically Africans sold their own people to the white slave traders who bring to the U.S.? Why was slavery an important part of life? Why was the Bill of Rights such an important tool that colonists could rally around, and that's what they fought for? I mean, you know, and we're talking about people. Why were people risking their life coming to an unexplored world in basically nutshells to survive? Again, if they had the information, what was life like in England, Spain, and France, transferred over. I think that would give them a deeper root as far as understanding what the principles are of this country.
I can agree with him more. Patrick said it earlier, talking about the emphasis now is on skills instead of content knowledge. And I'm just here to say, if you don't have any content knowledge to pin those skills to, you're gonna have the society of idiots, because they're gonna know what to do, but not why, or, I mean, there's no why behind it. The history is the why. And so,
I agree with you, Patrick, and my only concern is how could we do it in a way that's developmentally appropriate? Because having a kindergartner understand world history when they're still trying to come to grips with their own personal history, that they exist and there was a time when they didn't, and now they do. And so I think we have to be sensitive to that. But that, in the same vein, like you said, happening in your school and many of our schools, and we know demographically across our country, where the world's in many ways flattening out, and understanding having greater cultural awareness is important. And you develop that early, and those skills and understanding of that early. And so my only concern would be that we do it we look to it in a developmentally appropriate way, I guess, in the context. And so maybe one example would be, since we tend to use that expanding horizons at the early grades, we're starting at the child. How does the child interact with other places in the world or people? And I guess I'm still wedded to that approach, that developmental approach to some extent, but maybe trying to beef that up a little bit beyond just their own.
And that's, I'll say I don't know. Sites like that, sites like we go from 0 to 100,
Right.
real quick.
Right.
All of a sudden just they kind of go, we're going in the deep end. And that some students that may just have they've been exposed to things just naturally can make that transition earlier. It may even be going from talking about, I know like I was with my 4th grade son who was studying just the other day, and he was doing the continents chart, but there wasn't any discussions about, as we're even talking about Asia, it's just can you identify Asia on the map? So they identify Asia, but what exactly, what makes up something, there's not any real in-depth discussion about it. And the other thing, as I'm listening to Rolf, I would even kind of look at, I think you do have to be careful to understand that not everybody is going to see all of everything from a Eurocentric viewpoint, and that we
we have to understand that there could be something that's not just the Eurocentric piece. If I can say, one of my fifth grade teachers had to go and get an X-ray the other day. He was sick, and so I went in and taught fifth grade, and I was teaching social studies, and we were actually discussing this, and one of the things that came up was I asked the students, I had actually taught fifth grade previously, and I said, so who discovered America? And it was all over the board, and it was Leif Erikson, it was Christopher Columbus, it was the Native Americans, it was all over the board, and so then so what is Christopher Columbus famous for? And the question then came up, well, he discovered America, and I said, well, okay, so let's go back and let's look at that again. So we had a discussion about but then they said, well, there are already people there. I said, right? So there's already people there. Did he really discover it? And so we discussed all that, and then we discussed the idea of how is it that Christopher Columbus became famous for knowing, how did he become famous as the person who discovered America? And how did he get that title? What does that mean? And it becomes that idea, well, so much of our history was framed through the lens of what, especially Western Europe, knew at the time, and what they figured out at the time. And so when we say discovered, what we actually mean is that Western Europe realized there was this great big body of land there, and that it wasn't actually India. And so we go through that type of a conversation, and just even starting to realize just that other perspective of coming around to a different perspective. But, I just think even if it's encouraging just conversations about the fact that the world's bigger and there may be a different perspective out there, can help with some of it too. And I do think that if we ask, and I think that's the conversation I've had in fifth grade, I think you could probably have a very similar conversation with multiple age groups.
I used to have a conversation with my fifth graders as far as, okay, from the European standpoint, Columbus was a hero because he discovered these vast new lands that you can, explore. I said, now put yourself in the Native American shoes. The kids went like, what are you talking about? Okay, you see somebody coming up and never seen that kind of stuff before, what are you gonna do? So the perspective of the Native American side conflicts with the hero of Christopher Columbus. So, again, it goes through the teaching about how do you put that into standards? How do you embed that kind of thought into the standards? So we're looking at beliefs, we're looking at some of the other things. It also goes to instructional theory. So it's going to get deep, but again, you're looking at standards. How do you get that, lack of a better word, of putting that in? How do you put that into the standard?
And I would add to what Tanya and Austin and Patrick have said. When we were articulating our second grade curriculum and revising that a couple of years ago, we talked about how that identifying continents and oceans kind of feels like this skill hanging out here, and really wanted more content to make it relevant. And so we wrote our second grade curriculum to have a time span from 1400 to 1600 and talked about world cultures, where those world cultures came from, so that they could hang their hat on people that are similar and different around the world. And you can pull out from here's my school in Google Maps to here's my community to here's my nation to here's my world. And then here's how different things came to this world in terms of trade routes and explorers. And I think second graders are developmentally appropriate, in a developmentally appropriate way, wrap their hands around that. But it all of a sudden kind of made this whole thing about why you know about continents and oceans, because it was important, because there are these people that live in our world. And so I do think there are possibilities, to articulate some of those things, but I do think a lot of those process skills go back to having important content to work with. I would very much agree with Tanya. That's important. Yes. I'm good.
Most of my questions were answered.
Okay, so why don't you summarize for me what you thought? To the best of your ability.
That's a really good one. guess I would still just like to see that we're looking at it, not just in a better, there's more of a, not just more of a better, being aware of where we fit into the world, and that we're a worldwide citizen, not, that there is, that we want to take it to a bigger view in mind also.
So on yesterday's stuff that's on the wall, we kept coming back to, what the word that underlined was context. So United States history in context, or social studies in context of the world.
Do we want US history or?
Can I try shot?
Yeah, please do.
And include more global awareness in a developmentally appropriate manner.
Yeah.
Global awareness, world history, does that include both?
Because it would be, the reason I use that term, because it would cross the different strands. So whether we're talking about economics, or history, or cultures and traditions, it would just be, do it in a way that's developmentally appropriate for the children, whatever age group they are.
Like, I really like what Kathy just did in second grade.
Absolutely. And that wasn't world history per se, that was geography standard, identify the continents as a geography standard. But do it in a more of a global awareness sort of way.
And she also put a contribution of those different.
But
And it's nice when you have history
Yeah.
that aligns.
Right. You took something, Connie, because actually I was going to talk about what you actually did was went back, like what Connie said, was you went through that concrete. Are we going to go through blues like that? Level one, here's a continent, here's an ocean, but then here's the next step. And it went through a progression so that as they got to some of those higher level thinking skills, they were hanging on the content that you just taught them. So it went through all of those different pieces. So there's multiple levels that it hit, but it was all explicit in what you just said.
I'll know to repeat.
So and this.
Oh, I was just gonna say, just as an example, my children in the sixth grade are learning about China and these different places, but because when they were younger, they do not even, it was not, I don't know how else to put it, drilled into them what our world looks like and where China is and what are the countries that surround China. They're not required to memorize this information and just have information to go back to. There's absolutely no connection to anything. And it doesn't make any sense to the
I would
parents.
say that, I'm sorry, I interrupted, go ahead.
Okay. I was just saying,
But
it doesn't
actually,
make
it
sense.
is part of the standards that they identify it and that they do memorize it. And I think the
But
bigger
it's
struggle
not-
is I can work with kids for 2 months on that skill of identifying continents and oceans. But if they don't have important and relevant real life information to tie to that, it's just like seeing a triangle in the ocean. It's just a symbol, it's just a
both
name.
It's
Yeah.
in both of those pieces.
I mean, I agree with you that they don't have the skill, but I think it's not because we haven't articulated the skill in this case. I think it's because we haven't given it something relevant to connect to for kids. We haven't given them history to connect to it. It's just, this is just a picture of something, you know?
Okay. Back to where we were riding.
I'm not sure that captured what Patrick wanted.
I'm not either, that's why I've not written 3 or 4 and then.
I mean, I think, no, I think I kind of felt like it kind of did. I mean, I like just that awareness, the global, I think the awareness piece, because I think it speaks to like what Tanya just said about the fact that, because I can say right now, I guess I have a 4th grader, and he'll say, he just took this quiz and he did pretty well, so he knows where Asia is, but he would have no idea that China is part of Asia. So I don't know if we need to even highlight some of those bigger, big landmark countries. I don't know how you pick it other than there's going to be some bias there that we talk a lot about China and India and some of those places. Those become, even for me, when I think about the world, I think, okay, there's China. This country is by China. China is large, so I can always identify China. So it's near. Right, it's near China. So I can identify, I can look at and try to figure out, well, like Korea, I can try to associate somewhere between Japan's easy to because it's an island over. So you can kind of, I'm not sure we're going to get elementary kids to identify every country on the map. Plus, by the time we got it, they may change. So, you know, so it is some of those, I don't know, there needs to be some, just some anchors, I don't know if that's, you know, that's content knowledge, but and that's where I think there's just gotta be a better awareness of some of these pieces, and at least even if they maybe don't have it exactly, but this, to come into the Bean Dynasty is the first time that you've heard about that, and that seems.
Yeah, so actually, I mean, what I heard you saying when you were first talking about was that at all age levels, we should start teaching about the broader world in a way that's developmentally appropriate, right? And across, probably it's gonna be across the different strands of social studies. And it's probably more appropriate in some strands than others at different grade levels and as the children are developing, but that we really need to start earlier because it's a global world that we need to prepare our young people to be, and you can't start early enough.
By sixth grade also, this may be off subject, but once I got fifth grade students, there was a bias built in as to not wanting to learn certain things. You know, so if we can start them earlier, you know what I mean by bias as to not wanting to learn? That's not important to me. Age is not important to me. This part is not important to me. But if we start at a younger age and build that foundation, and then just progressively reinforce it.
What my kids know about China right now, and also my personal children, at times what I hear them talking about it is that's where everything is made.
Yeah.
So why is well, that's just where everything I say, everything I have says made in China or made in, you know, and so that's, I mean, I think that's something that, you know, that's something we need to be, you know, looking at. That's what, you know, that's their frame of reference is, yeah, my t-shirt says it was made in Malaysia. Yeah.
Okay, incorporate global awareness in a developmentally appropriate manner across various strands.
I think it's a good starting point. I mean, I don't want to get caught up in the.
Yeah, well, to your point, the stereotypes are pretty much set by age 14.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're waiting until sixth grade, we start teaching about other cultures.
That's too close.
It's hard to move them after age 14.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we are up to.
I took one that we talked about this morning, one I think I wrote. In the Belize, we have one term in this document for the standard knowledge content area, we have another term. So I think eventually, and we don't do it today or right this moment, but we have to either define terms well, or we need to define our term, some of our terminology. We were talking earlier about, are we a republic or are we a constitutional democracy? We have both of those terms, one here and one in the Belize, three different terms. And I've heard Mark Levin go on and on and on about why we're a republic and not a constitutional democracy. But I think we have to think through what term do we actually want to use and why.
Yeah, I guess he actually has a philosophy as part of the Belize. I'm sorry. You're right, you're exactly right.
I'll yield the floor to
He didn't ask.
No dissension. I would just say Desi actually has a glossary that they put out there as part of the Belize to help interpret the Belize. And I can't remember which term or whether both terms are in there or not.
So that might be something we want to check.
Right, and as we go forward, we're going to have to include that.
Yeah.
Judy?
I concur that that's a confusing issue, so.
You took mine. But it's a yes. It's a point. I mean, it's, you know.
The definition of term. You already took that.
I'd agree, and who changed it? And what was the rationale? Because 2 years ago, that strand, literally, nothing else changed except that title. It was principles of constitutional democracy, and 2 years ago it changed principles of the republic, and not one of the beliefs changed.
So that just happened.
Yeah.
Because there was no big announcement, it just happened.
Yeah, in fact, I stumbled on it as I was prepping for class, and I stumbled across it. I didn't know it had changed. Nothing. And then as I looked in detail at the individual standards in the GLE, they had not changed.
So just the title of that strand changed.
We went from,
In this grade level,
Principle of the public.
yeah, and that's why there's that confusion, I think, on the blue sheet versus what's in the GLE. It's because it literally used to say principles of constitutional democracy. And then 2 years, I think it was 2 years ago, suddenly it changed to principles of the republic.
What am I looking at?
I'm looking for the glossary.
I just pulled it up, there's republic, but there's no constitutional democracy. And this was last edited in 2008.
But this was the 2006
That's, yeah, that's
version, and it
2006.
was statutory, so this couldn't change the value. But this could change based on the work group setting.
Interesting. Okay. Kathy, thoughts?
On what we're thinking on.
I would not that.
Definition
Definition
of
of
democracy.
Oh, definition of terms.
Yes, I think we definitely need some clarification of terms, because like we had argued about what exactly that means and why, yeah, and also why did it change without.
I would agree, I think it'd be a great question for students to get to try to answer.
Now, we're talking, and now Craig, just let me clarify, please. You're talking about terms in general besides just those two.
Right. That's what it is.
Just, defining terms and consistent use of, I don't know. Whatever. All those who agree with that, including definition of terms. Okay. Would you like to agree with what you want to say?
My final product needs to include.
And would you say consistency across documents?
Yes.
Use consistently across them. Okay. The final product needs to include agreed upon terms used consistently across. All right, Ms. Judy.
I'm just gonna piggyback on this, that because there is a difference between the statutory piece and this in terms of standard number one. Point of reference might be a clarification of what the rationale was for that change. It's easy for us to sit here and speculate, but
Just change it one.
if there's a,
It was a typo when we.
I'm fairly sure it's not a typo, but what, I would like to understand the rationale before I make a decision about whether, which one, or don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
So you build your own, I don't know, change it. What's the deal? We build on it, it's okay that way, so.
So here's a more pointed question.
Right. Or, yeah, just a point of further
Investigation.
investigation, background.
Definitive background.
very first principle being the document shaping our constitutional democracy. I just personally believe that there is a vast difference between a republic and a democracy. And in a republic, the rights of the individual are valued. And in a democracy, majority rules. And we look at other countries that are democracies, and the majority rules everything. But what makes our republic different is that we are a constitutional republic, and we value the rights of every individual. Or that is the ideal of our country. That is what we don't teach that to our students. Then they will not live that out, which is, I think, what we all want. So for me, that very first one is like business. Just sends chills through my bones.
No, I think in this one, we've already spoken to it in the sense that we need a clarification of that term. And
I would just say, I think the principles are important, but I think the forming of those principles are important. You know, I think you can work with third graders, just looking at the preamble of the Constitution and different drafts of that and how it changed. We live in a society where everybody uses the Constitution for their personal document for why things should be the way they should be. And we say the founding fathers said this and this and this, and yet if you really go and look at that, that's not always the case. And so to me, it gets to that idea of sourcing. And I think that sometimes we leave those skills for middle school and high school, but if there's not kind of a stair-step progression of using those kinds of skills all the way along, I think kids are pretty lost when they get to middle school and high school. So the principles that the use of documents and the unpacking of documents, I think are important to kind of lay out how do we think, what's the best foundation for elementary to lay in terms of documents is an important thing for the school to think about.
Goes back to your talking about the kids needing to know the documents and so the documents and know to provide better. Laura, you covered that one.
Yeah, I agree. I think we talked about it well. And we do need just the definition.
I think you need to define exactly what it is that we want, you know, how you're gonna do, whatever the definition of clarity is there, but then the next step would be what exactly does that mean and how it's been used through documents or how it goes into lay forth and you know, whether it's in the Constitution or you know, what even, but even then you have to look at the context within which the Constitution came into effect. So it wasn't actually the first one, so we don't hear much about the Articles of Confederation, but you know, so getting even into some of the more details in some of those pieces, and even just looking at documents like that and talking about what all those different types of pieces are. So I think there's some of it's got to be done within the context of everything. So I think, yeah, we've got some clarity on how we define what it is and what exactly it is, how we look at it. But I also think, like I said, I'm kind of joking, but I think it's a great question as we're going through forms of government. That I think there's a way that you could actually ask this very question and have kids start actually figuring out the mission. So one of the questions I could see asking kids would be, are we a blank, blank, or blank? And having kids start to think about, hey, you can do it, whether you get into specifics or whether it's even, are we for you know, monarchy versus something else. That's something, you know, I think you can start those types of questions with younger kids even because it's bigger, and then you start to parse out more specifics even as we go back through. You know, so from American history, why do we not have a king versus, well, even just kind of some of those types of things that we can start to look at, you know, kids also.
Can you respond to him? Before I talk, do you want to? Okay. Agreed. I think that's why I brought it up. I think we have to definitely know the definition of what we're talking about. I'll give one example and I'll be quiet. I was working with some content teachers, giving them some literacy strategies to use in the social studies classroom. And one of the strategies we work with is what we are. What are we? System development. And it was a vocabulary strategy, and then we went to resource document. So when I was working with teachers about that, I hear confusion among adults. So it's just it's great for kids to think through, because we need to think through. So, agree.
Let me ask this question. Tanya, do you think, when we wrote, in our final product, that we need, clarity in the definition of terms that's used consistently through documents? Is that where you are? Or are you wanting something more?
I just think that very specifically, the terms constitutional democracy and republic, they don't go together. So, I mean, yes, but I don't think it addresses that specific issue. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yes, it addresses define these things, but it doesn't address my dire concern at what my kids are currently being taught in school, which is not what I was taught, not what I would see as what our country is. So does that make sense? That it's beyond just,
No.
yes, it's defining, but I think you have other things that you want defined, I would suggest. So for me, it's at this point, because I haven't had enough time to look at the standards, my biggest thing is, that's the first thing I see, is that,
Here's
right
what
now.
I'm gonna write this on the green, because I think we need to visit it again after you've had more time to study. Would that be appropriate? Sure. And I'm gonna put down Constitution of Democracy versus Republic. And then we can see if there's somewhere we need to go with that beyond just clarifying terminology. And you can give that some thought, and we can come back to it the next time. Or even later today if it comes to you. So,
It's a great plan for that. I agree with her that that is a concept we need to nail down before we.
but in we want our language consistent for everything, and everybody to have the same understanding. Okay, I'm just gonna put republic versus constitutional democracy. Is that okay? We know what that means. And of course, you got the word with it. And this green means we're gonna visit it again. Okay, and we are now back to Roman.
And actually, I'd just like to touch formally back on something I think we talked about informally before we started the actual conversation. Actually, I've got two, but I'll choose one that to build off of Kathy's earlier one, which is when I look at this, the framework, and I don't have a strong opinion either way. I guess I do have an opinion, but the current standards are written in a disciplinary perspective. There's a strand on geography, a strand on, by that I mean there's a strand on history, economics. And I know that other standards, and we even said yesterday, we think about the world more interdisciplinary, and that social studies should be taught interdisciplinary. And so I wonder if we shouldn't be thinking more about teaching social studies interdisciplinary within our state versus within these disciplinary silos. Again, I think we kind of talked about this some ways and verged on it. And I guess I'll just put that into a statement then for you to react to, is that I would like to see more interdisciplinary studies of social studies than disciplinary specifically.
Okay, I'm gonna write that down. And our wonderful Ben over here reminded me it's 11:30. We decided to do those early lunches.
Oh, okay.
Now, I want you to tell me that again. I'm gonna write it down, and you guys can be thinking about it over lunch or not.
I would
Come
like to
back and
see,
we'll respond.
I would like to see our standards reflect more interdisciplinary study of social studies versus the disciplinary structure that it currently has.
Standards. Tell me again.
Have more interdisciplinary structure than the disciplinary structure that it currently has.
think that'll be a huge step forward to bringing social studies back on the lower elementary side.
In interdisciplinary, I mean within the social studies.
Right, we're not talking about.
I'm not talking, that's right, I'm not talking math, social studies, I'm talking economics and geography together with history, you know, that sort of, so I'll leave it at that. And we kind of talked on that, I just want to put it on here.
Well, I think we could put that out and discuss it further. I just think we want to put it on. You just want to put it in times. Kathy?
So we go from upstairs, anybody?
Looks like you're walking downstairs right now, doesn't it?
Fantastic.
Is that the?
That's them.
We were gonna ask if they wanted to compare everything.
Although if this is statutory and their discussion was to, can we throw this out? It's kind of a moot question at this point, just statutory.
It would be moved, but she's gonna just double check that.
Absolutely.
So, and I have not heard back from her, maybe after lunch.
There's part of the time that I didn't have a comment because I was trying to look at the statute. The very first sentence says, section A, section blah, 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 which includes the number that's on this, that they are repealed, and 8 new sections enacted in lieu thereof. So potentially, they repealed them. When I go to 165.14, it only mentions 75 standards, it doesn't say the 75. So I think we have to find out more information, because I can't read legalese enough to understand what it does.
At the bottom of this, it says, it gives a number to them. Authority for Utility Standards, section 160.514, and it says in the first line, 160.514 repealed.
And then it gives a different, if you look online, it gives you a different 160.514, and it talks about 75. But you can't really tell if it's on a 75 or if we're creating whatever we create.
Because this one actually says 73 in all. It says 73, these standards 73 in all. So maybe we can still, we should have to be in.
So
So
hopefully,
we need more input.
clarity, yeah.
And she's gonna be getting that from the legislature.
I am not sure where she was checking, but she was checking to see, because it is in statutory, to see if we had the power to change that, not just the police.
Okay.
Okay?
I still think either way, this has been a good discussion.
Oh,
Well, I
great
think-
discussion.
I think we're just knowing right now, through doing this, what we want to make sure that we embed in the police when we go to. We check, check, have we got that, we got that.
Absolutely.
All right, lunch, and let's be back at 12:30.
Thank you all.
Oh, you got me, okay, that's good. The wine made it sure did.
But said the wine made up.
That sounds like that.
It's